name is Miley Bodoff-Wilkinson. I am an HR specialist in human resource, and I have been with the district for about 18 months now. So I decided to join the Air Force. Actually, in my senior year, it wasn't my plan in life. I did come from a military background. My mom and dad are both retired Air Force as well. So I decided to join the Air Force. I left for basic training 6 weeks after graduation, and I ended up doing 21 years. I definitely didn't expect it to be a career, but life happens, and things just happened throughout my 21 years that just kept me going. So after we retired, because my husband's active duty was active duty, retired as well. So we decided, okay, we're going to relocate to Phoenix. Now, what part of Phoenix do we want to live? And ultimately, our main contributing factor in choosing to retire and come back here to Peoria was for the schools. We still had one son that's still in school. One of the things I think I've learned in the military that has transitioned here in the school district and in human resource is my ability to pretty much adapt and overcome. In the military, you are subjected to so many, different environments and different situations, good and bad. And, it may not be the most ideal situation, but you are definitely going to figure out a way to adapt and overcome.
People find it hard to believe, but I was one of those people who actually enjoyed being in the Army. I liked everything about it. Then again, I'm one of those people who likes things kind of regimented. I thrive in that environment. We're going to do this now, this now, this now, and that worked out well. I wanted to have a skill that I could walk out of there with when I went in the Army. I didn't want to just go in an infantry and then come out and say, hey, what do you know how to do? I am really good at rolling around in the mud. And I can run from tree to rock and back to another tree really well. I wanted a skill, and to have supply chain management and logistics, which is what that one was really good, because it started at the unit level and then went to divisional and corps level. Coming out of the Army with the experience, plus 2 NCO academies, where they're teaching me how to be the leader and the teacher, and teaching me the instructional way, where I am not just there, but I am bringing the students into the process, which is one of the things I like doing in my classroom here, which is why I don't teach at the front of a room. I teach in the middle, because the students should be teaching with me as opposed to me teaching them, because otherwise they're not learning.
My father was military. He retired military. A lot of family that just had been military. So one of the biggest things was the family line, and then I wanted to travel. So I knew the military was a great opportunity to travel. Air Force core values are integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. And so I just feel that before I joined the military, I was 20. I had recently been married. Little things such as calling in sick for work, I didn't really, that wasn't a big deal to me. I was young, spending my time in the military active duty, and just that everything that you do, somebody else has a direct impact on somebody else. So dependability, responsibility, being reliable, I feel that those are some of the things, the values that I've really taken into my civilian job and into raising my children. Is you have to be, your word has to mean what you say. And so when you make a commitment and you're responsible for something, you have to be held to those standards. So I would say that is in many aspects of my life.
I followed in many of my father's and uncle's footsteps in joining the military. Went and spent 4 years in the United States Marine Corps. From there, I realized that I knew what I wanted to do moving forward. I got to volunteer at a local elementary school after I had a knee surgery, and working with the 2nd grade kids really helped me realize that I wanted to work in education. And that's where we are today. I think the biggest thing I took away was you don't get a whole lot of options to do this correct. And that is a perfect transfer to what we do with kids every day, right? If we're talking about a third grader, we got them in third grade one time, and we have to do it right the first time. We have to do it the best the first time because they deserve it. Their family deserves it, and our school communities deserve it. And that's truly that piece I was able to take away from my time in the Marine Corps was how do you excel in completing that mission with the limited supplies or materials or people. It's very similar to what we do in education. We know the funding is down. We know that the support is not always there, but at the end of the day, it's our job and our passion, hopefully, to provide the best for each and every one of our students.
My job is to assist administrators, teachers, crossing guards, bus drivers, whoever has direct sight of students, how to notify or identify students that may be suffering from some type of homelessness. I thought joining the military, being a college athlete, going through college, I got an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree. I thought I was somewhat disciplined, but I was mistaken. You know what I'm saying? The military gave me a great deal of discipline and structure in my life. It helped me understand that I needed to make a plan when I had some goals that I wanted to attain. I needed to make a plan, and it helped me understand how to follow through with the little inputs in my plan. Most of our families that I've identified as McKinney-Vento, unfortunately, are lacking some of these structures that help them make their plans and ultimately have success with their plans. So when I have identified a family as McKinney-Vento, the first thing I do is an assessment. So in my assessment, I'm as thorough as I can be. I'm as structured as I can be, so that when the parent sees, oh man, this particular person that's reaching out to help me is structured and disciplined, maybe I should be structured and disciplined. And so my goal ultimately is to help our families not become McKinney-Vento eligible. And how I do that is through the assessment. What is causing this brief or chronic homeless situation? And how can I help you no longer be homeless, no longer suffer from whatever it is that you're suffering from that's causing this homelessness?
Good evening, everybody. It's great to see everybody this evening. It's been a few weeks since our last board meeting, so welcome. All right, we will now return to regular session. Before we get started, I do want to let everyone know that Ms. Pingarelli, well, she was in our executive session via phone. She's running a little tardy. She'll be here shortly to our regular meeting. So that said, we will continue along and go into our moment of silence and Pledge of Allegiance. Ms. Underhill, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? And as we sit in our moment of silence, if we can continue to keep, all of our teachers, staff, students, and families in our hearts. Thank you.
And President Sandoval?
Yes, ma'am.
May we add our veterans of the Peoria Unified School District as well?
Absolutely, of course. Thank you for that. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Okay, 5.1, address the agenda and consider adoption or recommend changes. Board members, any changes to the agenda? Ms. Dunn? No? Ms. Underhill? Ms. Sayal Martinez?
No.
All right, me neither. All right, recognitions. Good. 6.1, Ms. Ari, I believe you're going to be doing that from the cabinet table.
Yes, good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and guests. You may have heard that last week there was an election, and on Election Day, a record number of parents, staff, and community members exercised their right to vote right here in the Peoria Unified School District. We were all tuned to Maricopa County Recorder's Office as those election results were pouring in. First, I would like to congratulate our very own President Sandoval, as he'll be joining us on the board for another term, and I know we will have 2 additional faces that will soon be welcoming to the Peoria Unified family. We also would like to congratulate Mrs. Pingarelli. As you all know, she will be headed downtown to represent her district in the House, and so we congratulate her as well. Also on the ballot, as you're all very well aware, were 2 initiatives specifically for the Peoria Unified School District, our Maintenance and Operations Override, as well as our Critical Needs Bond. And as Election Day came to a close, the M&O override was looking like it was going to be successful. We were all kind of, biting nails and watching as those updates were coming in continuously over the last week after that. And what we are seeing is that our override is looking like a success. And while our bond wasn't as successful, that override certainly represents a huge win for the school district, for this community, but most importantly, for our students. We really appreciate the confidence this community has given us to continue to be fiscally responsible and to fund those very important people and programs that we know are supported by our override. And of course, tackling an override and a campaign and getting the word out about the importance of this initiative for our community is really no easy task. And in fact, it was a team of dedicated individuals that came together with much persistence, strategy, and hard work to make this successful. There's one group in particular that we'd like to recognize tonight and acknowledge: the Political Action Committee that formed to get the word out. And that, of course, was the Support Peoria Students Committee. They're a team of parents, former educators, community members, business leaders, and really just so many that were out there championing public education in our school district. The work of this committee really should be commended. They did just a tremendous job sharing about our initiatives and getting the word out to our community. They are led by none other than Matt Bullock, who is here joining us tonight. He is not only their chair, but as you all know, he is a former governing board president and former governing board member here for the Peoria Unified School District. And so I think we should give them all a round of applause, but especially Mr. Bullock, so thank you. And we would like to invite you to the podium, Mr. Bullock. I believe you may have maybe some words to share on behalf of the committee, and then we have a little something for you as well.
Thank you. Very quickly, thank you to the President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, of course. I appreciate you allowing us to come for a few minutes to discuss and to talk about and to thank all the community members. And it's interesting, a political action committee is really made up of parents, and it's made up of concerned citizens and those who work together, but really was an ensemble cast. There is no way to pass something that big. We raised an unprecedented amount of money through contributors, mostly through hardworking people who put their money in. It wasn't some outside special interest, as we always hear these days. But we had the most votes. We had the most messaging, the largest amount of messaging ever for any kind of override or bond. We had a very, very successful effort because of I think, very much a large increase in the understanding that the state does not correctly, not over, not under, but correctly fund education. I think the word is finally getting out. I think the tide is turning. Although the bond didn't have a success, there's reasons why that happened. The fact the override passed, the fact that so many people got involved. We wrote 5,000 handwritten, personalized postcards, sent out tens of thousands of pieces of literature. We knocked on 7,000 doors. All that to get the point across that give Peoria the chance to continue to succeed at the rate it's succeeding, and give the support services, the assistant principals, the teachers, the nurses, the chance to succeed where they may not have if the override didn't pass. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. Thank you for letting us work with district and administration, where they constantly gave us good information, good knowledge. We were able to work together to really bring it to a success. Other opportunities in the future, but I think the groundswell is starting to change to understand that education is really the root of economic development. And so the board has always championed that. Even when I was on the board, I know each of you individually, you champion that. Please continue to champion that education correctly done is the root of economic development, which benefits all of us. I think if we do that, we'll have many more passings in the future. And if all goes well, concluding point, someday we won't need bonds and overrides anymore because we'll correctly fund it from a state point of view. That's what we're pushing for as well in the future. And thank you for your support. Thank you for administration support. And we appreciate all you do for us and for the kids. It really makes a difference. 4 years I used to be in your position. I hear it continually. Peoria is number one. Keep it going and keep doing what you do. And thank you very much.
And thank you, Mr. Bullock. And I know we have something to present to you. So we have Dr. Reynolds here with a couple of tokens of appreciation for you. A certificate that we will present you with, and I guess if we get you.
We have our certificate of appreciation. Matt, thank you so much, Mr. Bullock. You are an extraordinary leader. We couldn't have done it without you, so thank you so much. And also wanted to present you with a Rob Panzer, our Director of Arts here in Peoria, one of his very own pieces of artwork that he created. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Ari. Mr. Bullock, thank you again for all that you do for public education in here in Peoria. Thank you. All right, moving on to board comments. Ms. Stone?
I don't have anything tonight, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, I just wanted to really sincerely echo and thank Mr. Bullock and his team, because it is such a such a selfless effort that you do, and you've done it multiple times for us, and it's just amazing to me what you and your team put into it. So I don't know how to explain it, but I just so appreciate what you do and the level that you guys go to get things done. And it's a thankless job, you know? So I hope you know how truly much you are appreciated, you and your whole team. And then I also want to thank all of our, community members that got out there and got engaged in this election in so many different ways, from, community members to parents to staff to teachers who were on calling banks and all other kinds of things, and just getting people registered to vote. So just really, really appreciate it, and just thank you for your continued support of Peoria.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Sarah Martinez?
Thank you, Mr. Bullock, and your team and community members, especially to your spouse who gave up a lot of her time. I know what that's like. for selfish reasons, I'm grateful. I have children, elementary, high school, that benefit from the CTE programs, that I hear those kids that come over to my house and love those programs. And please know that the thank yous, every time I hear their faces, I do think of you and all the work that you've done. For the community, thank you. As we continue to prioritize safety, we needed our nurses, and that was part of that, that line item. And I'm grateful. I truly am. We have some work to do. They said loud and clear, we need to relook at how we structure things. So that message was received as well. And civic engagement was, I'm very proud that I belong in this community because people show up. They're watching and they're listening, and they are sharing their voices in different ways. And so we need to listen more and create more frequent opportunities to gather those voices. So thank you for being engaged, no matter what side you shared. I do want to add additional conversations. I've been taking my tour, inviting the board and administration joining me. Special thank you to Centennial High School, Mr. Hollenbaugh and Ms. Fitzgerald for coordinating lunch. And Mr. Wooten at Raymond S. Kellis, Ms. Tartaglio, and Ms. I believe it's Prime, the assistant administrators, but more importantly, we were there with students, about 25 students, and they dedicated their time to share with us the voice that I personally am missing. What I've confirmed in these two meetings, and we have the rest of the dates scheduled, so Ms. Contra is going to schedule send out in a board report all the dates for the rest of the high schools before this year end in person happens. But what I heard thus far is they trust the adults in the room. They want to be a part of the solution, and not all students' experiences are the same. And they advocate for their peers just as much as they advocate for themselves. And so we need to listen. They identified one good, easy takeaway, I believe, and it doesn't have to be a mandate, but I welcome teachers to solicit feedback forms for yourself. They want to help you become better teachers. And if you have something that you're personally working on, ask 1 or 2 questions at the end of the course. How are you making changes to addressing your own personal needs? Doesn't have to be a mandate. They want to help you. They love going to class. And the second thing is to the board, as we continue on this journey now and in the future, is what can we do as a board to identify ways to ensure student voice is heard and reflected on our end? So it's been a journey. I'm so grateful for every day. I do not take it for granted. And I know the clock is ticking on my term, but I will use every second. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Sayo Martinez. And yes, I want to echo the sentiment from all the board members, Mr. Bullock. You know, you like you said, you've sat up here in this seat. You continue to be highly committed, steadfast with regard to your commitment to public education, certainly here in Peoria. And I want to congratulate you and team also on just how you adapted and innovated, you know, during these times, right? So we had to do things a little bit differently to make sure that we got the message out. We got individuals engaged. So, and your efforts were clear on, you know, of the impact of that with just the high percentage of engagement, voter engagement, as well as, you know, the success of our override measure, which was, you know, critical, you know, to this district. So thank you again very much for all that you do. Appreciate it. In addition to that, I do want to acknowledge a gentleman, one of our coaches, Coach Williams, baseball coach at Centennial High School. I just wanted to acknowledge his just modeling of human kindness more than anything else. You know, where there was a loss of a fellow coach, you know, in one of our districts, and I did see a social media post that was sent out by Coach Williams, and the CH, is it the Home Run Club, I believe, is the baseball club there at Centennial. It's clear that yes, you know, well, you know, he is a part of, you know, our our umbrella here in Peoria. We are all in this together, statewide, across all districts. So it's just really appreciated. I really appreciate, his, again, human kindness and his certainly compassion and, collaboration and understanding of what everyone's going through. So I just wanted to give him a shout out for that. And lastly, continue to shout out to our teachers, staff, and our families. Everything that I just said, they continue to work very hard, from our, district leadership, our site leadership. Thank you to all of you for continuing to adapt to these very fluid times, and with the sole focus on prioritizing the success, of our youth, our students, and their families. So thank you for that. Okay. Superintendent comments. Dr. Reynolds.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
I don't know why I'm laughing about that, but go ahead.
Thank you, President Sandoval, Governing Board, and our cabinet and guests. Just a quick welcome to everyone here this evening. Really appreciate you being here with us this evening. A quick congratulations again from myself for President Sandoval. And although nothing is official until it is official, that's the superstitiousness in me. But we do want to obviously pass along our well wishes and thank you for serving. We really appreciate it. And then we'll be welcoming two new faces on our board, and we'll be inviting those members for recognition at our December meeting. So we'll get that going. So, and again, although we've already passed along our thanks in multiple ways, Mr. Bullock, again, the work that you and the PAC did in combination, in collaboration with our teachers, our staff members, our administrators who gave up their personal time to get the message out. Our community is so important to the support of this district and the success of this district. And so a giant thank you to our community out there for having faith in us and supporting us. So thank you for that. All right, so on Thursday, October 29th, Zuni Hills Elementary School held a parade for one of their students named Peyton, who is battling a number of very serious tumors. All students and staff were outside, spread out, wearing green, which is Peyton's favorite color. Her family drove by, the student body and staff, while they cheered her on as she is about to receive an experimental treatment for her condition. It was a joy to be a part of that community while they showered her with love. Another example of what it means to be part of the Peoria family. We wish Peyton and her family the very best as she continues to fight this battle. This week, the Arizona School Public Relations Association announced their 2020 Aspra Award winners. And our communication team, led by Mrs. Danielle Airy, brought in 7 awards, which is very exciting. So just to run through them very quickly, they were awarded the News Media for Excellence in Education Reporting Award for their nomination of Philip Haldeman from the Peoria Independent for his work to report on education in our community. Likewise, the team received an award merit for the following 6 categories: finance, publication, newsletter, photography, 2 for photography, social media, and a video, the video for School Finance Explained, which is a personal favorite of mine. I can't tell you how proud we all are, and I am, of Mrs. Airy and her entire team for their work. They are an extraordinary group. How we communicate to our community is critical. We hear it over and over and over again. And it's critical to our success, and these recognitions are obviously well-deserved. I also want to take a brief moment to thank all of our veterans who are out in our community for their service. Our communications team put together a really cool video, wonderful video, honoring some of our very own employees who have served our country. We want to say thank you to their service. And I encourage you, our whole community, to go to our website, peoriaunified.org, or check out any of our social media connections if you want to see that video. It really is great to hear from our veterans and some of their observations. So go check that out. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Okay. Moving right along to request to address the governing board regarding matters not included on the agenda. So we do have 4 green slips up here, and 3 of the 4 are tied to items that are on the agenda. So what I'm going to do is we'll get to those when we get to those line items within the agenda, but we do have one that looks like it's just tied to this item, and it's Miss Wendy Van Wee. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yep. Please. Thank you.
Hello.
So, and real quick, sorry, and real quick. So, as always, the public comment is limited to 3 minutes,
Oh, yeah.
and we'll have a timer that runs as you speak. But thank you for coming to our board meeting and using this platform.
Talking yet, Kim?
Little present.
First of all, 3 minutes isn't enough, but let me have all my seconds.
Kim, you ready? All right, very good. There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Welcome.
So, thank you. So I was here at the last meeting and brought up the whole quarantine mask thing. So believe it or not, I'm here again for the same thing. My kiddo's on a second quarantine, and I've called and I tried to talk to Dr. Reynolds, but I spoke to Miss Lovely Kim, which was awesome. And then I spoke to Chris Lopez Lira. For her to be on a second quarantine, it literally was back to back. She was able to come back to school on a Friday, apparently came in contact with somebody that Friday. I get a phone call that Monday. She gets to get quarantined again, and she just got back to school one day. And the day prior to her coming back to school, she had a negative COVID test, but she still couldn't come back to school. So again, I know last time I talked to you guys, I gave you the definition of guidelines and I gave you the definition of common sense. I wrote down the definition of common sense again. I'll be kind and I won't read it because I'm so upset at the fact that she had to quarantine a second time. She missed all of her volleyball games. That was it. She wasn't allowed to go. But AIA said she had to have a negative COVID test in order for her to play volleyball. But because of your guidelines, Peoria School District guidelines, she wasn't able to go even to go to practice or go to the last game. So help me understand how that ties together. That's my one complaint. The other piece of that is I've been in this school district since my kiddo was in kindergarten. She's now a freshman at Liberty High School. We didn't even live in the district when I brought my kiddo to Peoria School District in kindergarten. I came to Peoria School District for all those great and wonderful accolades that everybody keeps talking about and how great and wonderful the Peoria School District is. There's been rumors that Peoria School District might close down again because everybody's so up in arms over the COVID cases increasing. So I want to give you some numbers so that you guys can use this when you're deciding whether or not you're going to shut down this great and wonderful school district that I'm not very happy about. And I think there's other parents who would be here and want to probably say the same exact thing, but maybe they just don't want to stand up in front of everybody and say it. But it's getting ridiculous. So I calculated, or I didn't calculate, I went online today. Arizona has about 7.4 million people that live in this state. 266,562 COVID cases as of today. That's the number I got off the CDC's website. You're free to go fact check me if you want. So that means less than 0.03 or less than 0.04% of the population in Arizona has had a COVID case. The deaths in Arizona, again, as of today, 6,240, which is, again, less than it was like 0.024 or something like that, percent. Under 20, last time I was here when I talked to you guys a month ago, I asked how many of those numbers, of the death numbers, were under the age of 20. Somebody didn't guess it correctly. I gave it to you. I said 9. It's still 9, you guys, and it's only been a month.
Thank you, Ms. Van Wee, again, for attending the meeting and expressing your voice and using this platform. Now, it sounds like you had the opportunity to speak with Ms. Contra.
To Chris, too. I didn't. That's the only person.
Okay. As always, I mean, it sounds like there's some AIA concerns, and then as well as, our just overall quarantine process. So if we can make sure that we have a conversation with Ms. Van Wee around these items, that'd be great. Thank you. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. And I believe there is a public comment. I thought there was. No, it doesn't look like there. Nope, I think we're good. So at this point, are there any line items that we'd like to pull from the consent agenda? Ms. Stone? No. Okay. Ms. Underhill? I just had one. Sure.
I'd like to pull 8.16.
I'll second that. Ms. Pingerelli? Okay. Ms. Sarah Martinez?
Just one, please. 8.18.
8.18. I do need a second for that.
I'll second.
Okay. So, Ms. Contra, we have two items requested to be pulled by board members, 8.16 and 8.18. So I do need a motion to approve the consent agenda minus 8.16 and 8.18.
I move to approve the consent agenda minus 8.16 and 8.18.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. Underhill to approve the consent agenda minus 8.16 and 8.18, and a second by Ms. Stone. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes 5-0. Okay, Ms. Underhill, 8.16.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify, because I know that we've been, hoping for and waiting to get word about these funds. I was just curious about, one, and I could be reading this wrong, but it looked like the monies are required to be spent by just the end of the year, end of the calendar year, is that correct? And I also wondered if we've been able to kind of determine as of yet, I know we had some estimates around our resulting shortfall due to our 40-day ADM. And then just lastly, this was more connected to the first question, but just is this all still reimbursement or is it something different? So just a little clarification, because I know we've been waiting on those funds. And the amount we don't, I guess, have yet. But.
Well, thank you. Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, Mrs. Underhill. This award letter and subsequent grant agreement is related to the Enrollment Stabilization Grant. You've heard me at past board meetings talk about 3 grant opportunities, which have really become 2 grant opportunities. ESSER, the Elementary Secondary Support Relief Grant, as well as ESG, the Enrollment Stabilization Grant. You are correct in noting that our requirements to have expenditures, meaning check out the door for reimbursement, are effective as of December 30th. In fact, when I've provided past updates, it was December 4th, and they've actually moved that date back. The Enrollment Stabilization Grant is part of the CARES Act and federal funding that came through the governor's office. It's not through ADE. It's not the same as ESSER, which is the $4.2 million grant that we're managing, a reimbursement grant that goes from March of 2020 to September 30th of 2021. Enrollment Stabilization Grant is that delta, that differential between 98% of your prior year funding or 105% of the current year funding as of the 40th day, which was September 30th. I can tell you with our calculations that we're going to fall into the first category, which is 98% of the prior year funding. And what we're doing with our team right now is following a prescribed process where we needed to apply, which we did. We've received the notification letter that we are eligible. We will be receiving confirmation of our preliminary calculations from the governor's office and through the grant process in late November. related to the expenditures that will be eligible for reimbursement up to that 98%. I did share during the last board meeting when we provided our bond and override update and the AFR in October that our initial projections were low because we now understand that we do have a decrease in enrollment that's around 1,600 students, and that's not weighted ADM. And there's a calculation between in-person and distance learning where you have a 95% funding percentage versus 100%. So what I'd like to do is wait until we get our final confirmation to publicly announce that dollar amount. But what I do plan to do is with our December budget revision, we will be looking in depth at the Enrollment Stabilization Grant expenditures that we will be reclassifying out of M&O into the ESG fund. It's again not new money. It's in part supporting the district for a decline in enrollment, which results in a decrease in revenue. And our deadline is indeed December 30th. And so this is a step in the process to sign the letter. It's federal monies through the governor's office. And with our December budget revision, I will be providing comprehensive information on our final numbers.
Great, thank you. No, I appreciate that. It seemed quick, and it is, I guess, so.
It is.
Thank you for handling it. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill, and thank you, Ms. Myers. So now what is 9.1? Any further questions, comments on this line item, Ms. Stone? You good? Ms. McGurley? Good? Oh, perfect. All right, I do need a motion to approve 9.1, ratification of enrollment stabilization grant
I
agreement.
move that we approve 9.1.
I'll second that. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Stone and a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Moving on to 9.2, approval of school level reports. Ms. Sam Martinez.
Thank you very much, President Sandoval. So, Ms. Myers, I apologize. I didn't speak to you over the week about this, but we have been, at least I have been keeping an eye for this update. Do you mind elaborating what school level reporting is, and then help me understand how that's going to help our district make decisions?
Well, thank you, President Sandoval, Mrs. Seja Martinez, members of the governing board. Within our consent agenda, you do see our school level reporting for fiscal year 2020. This is a new requirement. It started last year in fiscal year 2019, where there was some additional information included in our annual financial report. You'll recall that every October we bring our annual financial report, which is a look back on expenditures compared to budget by fund, by function, by program, object code district-wide. As part of ESSA, which is the Every Student Succeeds Act, which is attached to our Title I funding, you've heard us talk about per pupil expenditures that are a requirement of the ESSA funding. That responsibility in part is being met by ADE. And so all school districts, starting with fiscal year 2019, had a requirement to not only add a fund level program, function, object code to report expenditures, but to actually start to allocate district-wide expenditures by site, by location. And so that work has continued, and I must say it was quite the effort. In fact, the state provided all school districts an extension until November 20th because of the volume of analysis, which was outside of our requirement to have our AFR annual financial report completed by October 15th. So our budget analyst, Veronica Fabella, I'd like to recognize her dedication and how she prepared all of this information. So you will see this data flowing through ADE, and in fact, they now have their school report cards on the ADE website that any community member can look at, where there's additional information that will provide per pupil expenditure data that our school level reporting feeds into. We as a district as well with enrollment can look at expenditures at a school level. But it's in part making sure we met the ESSA compliance reporting deadline that was in place effective January 1st, 2019. So for all school districts, this is new this year.
Well, thank you very much. And the way I understood, and please correct me if I say anything that's not, like when I hear, as I served as a teacher and sat in the boardroom, people always said, tell me where you spend your money and I'll tell you what you value. these documents that are sitting in this consent agenda item per school site is exactly what that statement means. And so it's taken a long time, and I'm so grateful that your team has put in a lot of work. Now, this next board and the community and the budget team can tell where we're spending our money. And so my question to you, Dr. Reynolds, how much time in general do administrators at the site level take a look at their own school budgets?
Meaning on how they plan
How
their
they
budgets?
allocate these monies, if we're spending money on programs, like what's in general? Obviously, every school's different, but in general, do they sit down and say, I have X amount of dollars and I have 800 students, I need to increase literacy, I'm gonna spend Y dollars to move that dial? Like how does that, help me understand how that conversation unfolds at the site level when every administrator is responsible for X amount of dollars?
So each building leader would probably handle that in his or her own unique way, in how they go through that budgeting process. I can tell you as a former principal how I went through that process, and that would be with a team, right? Whether it's your school council or a leadership team, identifying those areas of need, and then figuring out how to allocate the resources the most effectively.
So with this new information and your experience, what could we expect at the board level that you're going to prioritize in that type of processing? If not every site administrator does it the same way, what are some key indicators for you that are going to prove that they're looking at their budget and making sure that they're spending it efficiently and effectively to drive outcomes?
So a lot of that would come with, right, individual principals' goals and their work with their supervisor, as well as, if you remember in my goals, it is to encourage a greater understanding, a greater utilization of our school councils. And so one way that I would recommend to all principals is that they use their school council to communicate their budget to and get feedback from when they're doing that process.
That I like to hear is more transparency, and I don't like that word, but the reality is more reflective listening of how do we want to spend this money. And going forward, I hope that these types of conversations per school site are not in consent agenda item, whether it be in a district website or by school site, that it's available. And then as I think through this, my ask is we're here to serve students, and I know that it's part of the process. So where are we of translating this data per school site, per student spending? Where's that timeline at?
So, Mrs. San Martinez, President Sandoval, to add an additional comment to your question with school-based budget allocations, we do provide a maintenance and operations and capital budget allocation each year to all of our schools that has a dollar amount associated with enrollment. So I want to be clear with that. And a number of our expenditures each year are budgeted and managed at a district-wide level, at a department level. For instance, academic services or for staffing, as an example, that's at a district level. So I just want to clarify with that. The information will be helpful as we move into the budget process next year, because what's unique about this particular report, it's all funds, not just maintenance and operations and capital. So you can do a delta between the two, but again, that also includes grant funds, and we have a separate grant department and grant managers that are responsible to work with the schools on how those dollars are spent to be in compliance with the grant requirements.
It's definitely a new way of looking at school finance, and it's a lot of work. And if you haven't had the time, the skill, and the will to have to look at it, it does make this conversation challenging to understand. It takes work. So no doubt about it. I've seen some of your presentations of even teaching student council leaders of how to manage their budget. But at the end of the day, what we spend our money on is what we value. We want to make sure every cent is used to help support our children and staff. So let me just reiterate the question. When do we see a report or a communication per school site of per student spending. So if I know I go to Ira Murphy, they have X amount of dollars, they have 800 students, that translates to X amount of dollars per student. Does that make sense? And here's where I'm going with this. We're about to have a facilities utilization study and having to make very difficult decisions. And so I would like the board and the community, as I will be on the other side soon enough, if understanding what's the per student spending, especially when we look at repurposing schools or other options.
And that wouldn't be difficult for us to be able
Not
to
at all.
provide.
Okay, perfect. So in the near future, as we finalize this data, that's great to hear. Thank you so much. I know, I really appreciate the time you and your team has put into this, and I know our community, those who ask, where are we spending our money? It's getting easier to look at, so thank you. That's it.
Thank you for that. Ms. Sayre Martinez, any other questions, comments on 9.2, Ms. Stone?
I do have some comments, Ms. Myers. I was going to pull this myself till Ms. Sayre Martinez had said that she was going to pull it. And I just wanted to say, I was so excited to see this and reading through and all that. Really good work, and I really appreciate it. And I agree with what Ms. Sayre Martinez is saying. Digging down to the details is where finances become clear to people that aren't just steeped in school finance. It can be very confusing, and I think that this is a good thing to show our community, and I really appreciate it. So thank you and your team so much.
Thank you, Mrs. Doan, President Sandoval, members of the board. All districts now have this requirement, so it benefits the community as a whole, even outside of Peoria Unified. But again, I'd like to acknowledge the majority of the work was managed by our budget analyst, Veronica Fibella, and my hat's off to her. She's an incredible team member. We have a very lean team right now, and her dedication is what you're seeing in these reports as a result.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, and thank you for that comment, Ms. Doan. Ms. Underhill, any other questions, comments? Nope. Ms. Pingerelli? Yep, good. Thank you again, Ms. Sayre Martinez, for pulling this item. I do need a motion to approve 9.2.
I move to approve 9.2 school level reporting.
I'll second.
So, Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Sayre Martinez and a second by Ms. Doan. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board members. Okay, moving on to action items. 10.1, ratification of the 2021-2022 Peoria Unified School District calendar. We do have a public comment tied to this line item, which we will have read or expressed after the district update, but before board comments. So, Ms. Ari.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and guests. We do have 2 agenda items this evening related to the school district calendar. The first item that you'll see before you is something that you have seen before. We bring forward to you for ratification tonight. We would have added this to consent, but we did place it before you as an item this evening because there is a change from when it was previously approved. We are asking that you add an additional day, one in the fall semester, one in the second semester, that would be part of parent-teacher conferences. So when this was originally approved, it just indicated 1 day for parent-teacher conferences. This is being brought forward to you this evening on behalf of our current school calendar committee, of which I'll share more in depth about their work in the next agenda item.
Very good. Questions, comments? Ms. Doan?
I thought we were going to have the...
Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you for that. Mr. Eager? Yes. Welcome, sir. Thank you, Ms. Doan. Ms. Contra?
Make sure she has her timer ready. There we go. Okay.
There we go.
President Sandoval, members of the board, Superintendent Reynolds, and Cabinet. My name is Frank Eager. I'm the Vice President of the Peoria Teachers Association. I'm here tonight to express concern over the calendar being presented tonight. For the last few years, the budget team has negotiated an optional protected workday for teachers on the day before we officially start our contract. We've been fighting for this day to be added to the contract permanently and been told that it will be added next year for the past few years as well. It's something that's been going on and on with this for a while. The budget team last year was again told we could not add it permanently for this current school year for two main reasons. Contracts were all ready to go out, and the calendar was already adopted. So that's why we're coming today to kind of talk to you about it before it gets adopted. While this day has not officially been negotiated through budget for 21-22 school year, PA requests that the day be added to the calendar now so that it can't be a reason not to permanently add it starting in 21-22. PA understands if needs to be added with the understanding that the day needs to be officially adopted through budget. This day is that we are furloughed years ago during the recession. So we lost this day many years ago when we had our last recession. It's important that we add this protected day permanently for our teachers. This day was brought up during calendar committee, but not approved because it needed to go back through budget again. PA does not want to see this become a back and forth issue, where we kind of every year try to come back, discuss it, try to get it signed, all that stuff as well. PA does not want to see keeping this day optional creates a large amount of work for the staff, and we simply ask to begin to taking steps to add the day back for teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Eager. Questions, comments, Ms. Stone?
No.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill.
Yeah, I guess I just need a little clarification on that. Thank you for Mr. Eager. So as it stands right now, it's determined year by year whether or not the protected day is added in, or is it optional protected day? So I'm just trying to understand that.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Underhill, I'm actually going to hand it over to Ms. Myers to clarify that for us.
Well, thank you, President Sandoval, members of the governing board. For the last several years, and I'm relying on memory, so I'm going to say it started in 2018. I'm relying on memory on that. So we'll say at least for 3 years, there has been a protected teacher day that's not mandatory. It's optional. But through the budget team and representation from our teacher groups, the request was to have that day brought forward to become permanent. You'll recall when we brought the budget team recommendations forward last spring, there was the request to have that day for fiscal year 2021 with the asterisk requesting that it become added not as a year-by-year day, but rather permanently added based on available funding. That was the caveat. And so that is a day that a number of teachers have been focused on. And I'll look to Dr. Davidson. I don't believe every teacher takes advantage of that day. It's not mandatory. It's available for those teachers to come in early, but it is a request that has been in place for several years.
Ms. Underhill, President Sandoval, just to add to that as well, as Ms. Myers just stated, the additional day, when it was established a few years ago, was for instructional staff only, so it was those coded out of the function code 1000. So that certainly has been some dialogue back and forth with us in Human Resources, our budget team members, as well as to see, is this something we would want to consider for all certified staff? Because there is a disconnect there, and I do think that does raise some concerns at some of our campuses. So that's something we would need to talk about as Ms. Myers discusses with available funds.
So just to clarify, every year it has been added in the past and stated with like the asterisk with available funds. And so is that what PA is asking for, that it just always be established that way even with the asterisk with available funds? Okay. So, and it's been a voluntary workday up until this point. So it sounds like it's still based on budget availability, correct? So what are the reasons for it not being just added every year with available funds as the asterisk?
I can respond. As it was discussed with the budget team last year, the calendar and the contracts being issued and the number of work days, as well as the annual salary all being calculated, had already gone through the process. So for teachers who take advantage of this optional day, there's a timesheet approach, if you will, roster, and they're paid from that. Again, I don't believe every Function 1000 certified staff member takes advantage of it. So the other thing we always have to be mindful of, if you're changing the start date of a contract or a calendar, that could have a benefits impact, as well as you look at calendars, beginning of the month, what day is that optional day in. But it is a request that has been brought forward from our teacher association for at least 3 years, and we've had that optional day, I believe, for 3 years, again, relying on memory. And when we recommended our budget and compensation increases for fiscal year 2021, it was noted that the request was to make this permanent based on available funding.
So I'm sorry, I just want to clarify. So it sounds like that recommendation is going forward, but yet we're not, are we, just trying to clarify. It sounds like we're all moving on that same train.
So President Sandoval, Mrs. Underhill, I think what we may be seeking clarity on is if there needs to be any indication or change relative to this school calendar, which indicates when we start school and end school, or if this is in fact a calendar that is used for salary and for putting together everything with regard to employees.
Oh, okay.
Ms. Ari, if you don't mind, I think one of the ways I would view this is, as you just stated, more of the community-based calendar, whereas we have 22 or so different work-based calendars for our different employee groups, and I think that is where we would demonstrate the additional day being added or not, as well as in our contracts when those are brought to you for approval.
Thank you, Dr. Davidson. And just for clarity, that asterisk that we were talking about, that has not been a part of this calendar that you have approved in the past. This calendar has been to indicate start date, end date, and breaks for school and students.
So this request is basically in regard to the workday calendar as opposed to the public school day calendar?
Yes.
Okay, and that could be dealt with at another meeting or another date, or? Okay.
Dr. Reynolds, you were going to say something?
Well, I was just going to say, that this is a topic that comes up, I was going to say periodically, but I've only been here for a year, so, but it comes up. I think that, just to address Mr. Eager and the concerns, we can look at some of those hurdles that have gotten in the way and barriers in the past, as we go through that process and explore that through the budget process, but also even looking at our contract language and possibly providing some flexibility in there based on, so that we don't find ourselves in the same situation year after year.
So when does the work calendar, when does that discussion begin and end, I guess, to formalize it for subsequent years?
President Sandoval, members of the board, those work calendars begin to be reviewed in December, and then typically put together for employees based on this type of calendar here. So in December would be the answer.
But we're not involved in that.
Right. And I guess I'm just wanting to it sounds like there's still the opportunity for PEA, Mr. Eager, team to have discussions with the district to talk about that regarding the work calendar. Sorry. Okay. Go ahead, Corey.
I just wanted to clarify, so that would happen prior to contracts being developed, et cetera, so we wouldn't get in a conundrum there? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Pingrelli? Questions, comments? You good? Ms. Aaron Martinez?
Just to add, to include a cost analysis, if we're anticipating this potential expense every year, include a cost analysis in a board report would be fine, the outcome of whatever takes place. Thank you. In regards to the agenda item and what's being presented, I don't have any questions.
Perfect.
I had the same questions, Ms. Underhill, so thank you for taking that.
Ms. Ari, thank you very much. Board members, if no further questions, comments on this line item, I do need a motion to approve 10.1, which is the ratification of the 2021-2022 Peoria Unified School District calendar.
I move that we approve 10.1.
I'll second.
All right, Ms. Concho, we have a motion by Ms. Doan and a second by Ms. Underhill. Board members, please cast your vote. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board members. All right, moving on to 10.2. We do have a public comment tied to this line item. But prior to listening to the comment and board members' comments and questions, we shall listen to the district. Ms. Danielle. Welcome back.
Thank you again, President Sandoval, members of the board, and Dr. Reynolds. As I shared, this is our second agenda item related to school calendars, and I am here before you this evening to just quickly remind you of our process, share a little bit more about the survey that was conducted, and then present before you 3 years of recommendations for your approval for the school calendar. Just a reminder that this is in reference to Governing Board Policy ICA, which we previously reviewed in September. And at that time, you called for a school calendar committee to reconvene and participate in this work. As you know, this policy indicates that that committee will bring forward to you 3 years of rolling calendars and provide that to you prior to November 15th. And so that is what we are here this evening to discuss. The purpose of that committee, as I shared with you, is outlined here before you just for a reminder. That committee did an incredible job, and they did so on quite the quick timeline this year. We're very appreciative of their work. We did follow open meeting law and provided those meetings for the first time as a calendar committee, live streamed and then available on demand for our community as well. We had quite the diverse committee representing cross-sections from around our district. Both school leaders, teachers, as well as parents were a part of that committee, and a very good mix of both returning members as well as new members that were able to join our team. I'd like to recognize Mrs. Ceja Martinez, who once again joined that team, and so we appreciate her serving and the insight that she provided as well. I'd like to recognize Mrs. Julie Gerritsen that's here this evening, a member of that team, actually a long-standing member of the calendar committee. We really appreciate the knowledge and the background that she provided. So thank you very much to you, Mrs. Gerritsen, and to our entire committee. One of the first things that the committee shared with us as they were kind of going about their work is the need to once again survey our community to get a set of data points so that they could make a well-informed decisions to bring forward to you this evening. I want to highlight just a couple of the aspects from that survey, but we did include the complete survey results for you in this agenda item as well. It was a record year for surveys, and we had more parents and staff members respond than ever before, and we typically conduct this survey about every 2 years. So you can see more than 6,000 parents and staff members provided feedback that you will be hearing tonight and that you will see included in that full report that we provided to you. Just a quick snapshot or overview, you can see by and large our community is pretty satisfied with the current calendar and the concepts that you will see broken out there and kind of how people are feeling relative to each of those concepts we wanted to share with you. The one in particular that I'd like to highlight is fall break. And we asked specifically about fall break. We've had a number of iterations of fall break on calendars over the past, 10 years in my time here leading this committee. But you can see overwhelmingly that our fall break, which falls across the whole week of Thanksgiving, is extremely popular in this district. And so when we check in specifically on that particular area, just wanted to note for you that people really do enjoy having that full week off the week of Thanksgiving. New to the survey this year was kind of an interesting question. The committee really thought it was a good time to get a pulse on our community on maybe some other areas that might be of interest to focus on or to further study. Now, I'll note that this was not work for the committee to engage in through their time, as they were really focused on bringing the next 3 years of calendars in that accelerated timeline, but maybe something for the board to consider in the future, or of course for administration to follow up and really kind of dig into a couple of alternative type calendars and at least further study those concepts. And as I shared, you will see full calendars included in this agenda item. There are drafts here for you, but after much consideration and deliberation, what you are seeing for approval, what we're bringing for approval for you this evening, are school calendars for the years 2022-23, 2023-24, and 2024 425. You will note that we were able to, in all 3 years, include a midweek start, something that has been increasingly popular also among our across our community, and that's of course mostly for our youngest learners as they kind of ease into what it's like to be in school and to start the school year. That certainly has been popular with staff and with parents alike. You can see all of those federal holidays that are observed on the calendar: the full week fall break, 2-week winter break, and then continuing on through second semester, concluding our school year prior to Memorial Day. I'll note a couple of changes that we are bringing forward as part of these calendars, as well as a second page that will go with each one of our calendars once they are approved by you and posted, and that removes all the colors that you see on here, as well as the charts and symbols, and it is just a basic description that's just all in one now, part of our calendar, so that there are multiple formats for accessibility for our community. So we'll be sure to post that once these have your approval. So, President Sandoval, I bring all 3 forward for you for your consideration and approval, and of course, I'm available for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Before we get into board comments, questions, we do have a public comment on this line item by Miss Julie Garrettson. Welcome.
Good evening, President. Oh.
There he goes.
My job.
Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and Mrs. Airy. It has been my pleasure to serve on this committee. I was going to guess 10 years, but was it the first time for both of us? And sadly, this, I believe, is going to be my last calendar committee. My youngest daughter is a sophomore, and so she will be graduating in 2023. So that's why I think it will be my last time on the committee, although Mrs. Airy, before this meeting, she was like, oh, maybe we'll be able to bring you back. I have thoroughly enjoyed being on this committee. It was my first introduction to a district level committee, which I think, if possible, all community members, parents should be on a district level committee to see how things work at the district level as opposed to at the school level. So many of us are very familiar with the school level. I wanted to share with you how I got on this committee. It was Hal, what was his last name? Borhauer was sitting outside the new Sunrise Mountain Library asking for signatures so that he could once again be on the ballot to run for school board again. And I told him, I said, I will sign the petition, whatever it was, but I have some questions for you. And I don't remember what it was, but I was upset about something. There was a change from one calendar one year to the next year, and so I voiced that concern to him, and he took down my name and number. He listened to what I had to say, and he said, someone will be in contact with you. And I thought to myself, that's the end of this conversation. And within a few days, I did receive a phone call from Mrs. Airy about the calendar committee, and the rest is history, I guess. So if I wouldn't have spoken up, I don't know that I would have ever joined the calendar committee or many of the boundary committees that I've been on, or the action, like for the bonds, whatever those committees are called. So I just wanted to take some time to say thank you for having those committees, and so we have the opportunity, the parents have the opportunity to be involved.
Thank you very much.
Mrs. Airy? We could add another community member slot to that that committee, correct? Okay, just checking.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly right. Okay, board members, comments, questions? Ms. Doan?
Well, everything looks good, but I was looking at 22, 23, and I saw for December, it's like no time before Christmas. And I was like, there's going to be a lot of screaming about that. But I understand that the calendar has to be the way it is because of, yeah. But I was just looking at that and I said, there's going to be a lot of screaming.
President Sandoval, Ms. Doan, each time we come together to look at the next 3 calendars, there's always a year that's a tough one. And for the committee, this calendar, 22-23, was a challenge. And so based on how the days fall, we always get one that's a little maybe tight that time of year.
Yeah. I just kind of want to say I appreciate this. I can hear the screaming now, so.
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Doan. Ms. Underhill?
Well, first I want to say, Julie, thank you so much, because I know you have been so involved in our district for a lot of years, and it just really appreciate it. I know the community that you're from really appreciates it, and just thank you for encouraging others to do the same. So thank you for that. Also, I think the calendar looks great. I was kind of excited to see the second conferences moved into March. Am I seeing that right? Because in the past, I believe they've been in February. And as a teacher, I think that's great because it gives us a little more time. I don't know if that was...
So President Sandoval, Mrs. Underhill, part of the work of the committee is trying their best to balance the quarters and the semesters. And so it's not all colors and squares. There's a lot of math that goes into kind of making sure we're getting as much of a balance as possible. And so some of that each year is kind of the attempt to balance those. We know that especially at the high school level, there are many students that are in 9-week courses, and so we want to try to provide as many instructional days in each of those quarters as possible. So that's why you are seeing that.
Okay, that's great. No, I just think it gives us a little more time once kids get back in and you can see that progress and still have enough time to be prepared for the end of the year. So thank you. And thanks to the whole committee. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Pingarelli?
No questions, just thank you.
Thank you for that. Ms. Sam Martinez?
Yes, thank you. And the committee talked about, they were so engaged. How many days in a quarter, 180 days, what's the law say? What about junior high? They have so many hours, and they try to balance out, well, if we move the day here, that turns that 1 quarter lopsided. So the amount of conversation was in-depth. Virtual, they were adaptive, they logged on, they were on their phones and listening and engaged. Talk about moving through this environment with fluidity and finesse, and at the end of the day have a product to deliver. I do have one question that came up, and I sent an email to you about it, and this is a result of our community is more engaged than we've ever had them. And we saw it in the election. So one conversation that came across talking to a community members, why doesn't the district have an election day or a committed day in the calendar if we're really trying to increase the engagement within our community? Why isn't there a day off or even a half day? And we didn't talk about this unless I missed the conversation on elections. And so I did a quick calendar check. It's for each of those days, but if you want, Danielle or anybody, give me a background why we haven't identified Election Day as committed to civic engagement.
So President Sandoval, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, thank you for that question. As we remind the committee or share with new members that come on each year, for every day that we may take off, we have to add that back in somewhere within the year, because we do have to try to get that 180 days. But I believe, if my memory recalls me correctly, this may have come up during one of our meetings, and a lot of discussion also around the way people are voting now, that there's many more than ever that are using, not always just going to the polls on election day, which would warrant that day off. Also discussion around, employers kind of giving more flexibility on coming and going if you do need to go to the polls. So I think there was a little bit of discussion on that, but by and large, if we are going to remove a day and have that be a day off for our students, that we do have to add that back in somewhere. And of course, paying extra attention to not wanting to start any earlier than we're already starting in the year, but also not wanting to push past that Memorial Day weekend.
I appreciate that insight, and that makes sense. Like I said, there's a lot of calculation that goes in deciding on a calendar. Just food for thought as we continue forward and prioritize civic engagement. Elections do matter. That's the best way to elevate all voices, is maybe even consider for that week, that Wednesday early release day on that Tuesday, that 1 week, just move it to that day so that our staff knows that we prioritize their voice as well.
And I think, one of the, our voters, as of now, have a variety of options when it comes to mail-in voting, those kinds of things. But also, having been part of these discussions in the past, sometimes when our children are not in school, it provides our families less flexibility to be able to vote, be able to get to elections because of daycare issues, those kinds of things. So it's absolutely worth a discussion and seeing if that's something that's viable for the future.
Perfect. And since there are so many ways, maybe maybe the staff doesn't even want it. But just putting it out there, consider that way we could say they already have the means to vote, but if it's something that they would like, it's a benefit that we could say we support your voice, and here's the best way we can show you how to do that. So, okay, that's it.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. San Martinez. Ms. Airy, thank you very much. Ms. Gerritsen, thank you. I first met you probably about 4 years ago. I've always come to know how engaged you are with the district, and I really appreciate your leadership and being a voice for the community, parents. So thank you again, just for being collaborative, being part of the team. So really appreciate it.
And President Sandoval, before you vote,
Yep.
I would also like to just pass along my deep appreciation for the work of this committee and Ms. Airy's leadership as she facilitates this discussion. Calendar committees are the most popular committee to facilitate in the district, and Ms. Airy has to fend off a lot of people every year who want to take over that. So we really appreciate her leadership, and again, the committee, it's invaluable, their feedback.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ms. Airy. Thank you. All right. If no more questions, comments, I do need a motion to approve 10.2. Consideration for approval of the 2022-23, 23-24, 24-25 Peoria Unified School District calendar.
I'll move that we approve 10.2.
Just need a second.
Second?
All right, Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Doan and a second by Ms. Underhill. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes 5-0. Ms. Airy, thank you. All right, moving on to 10.3. We do, actually, nope, we don't. Presentation and discussion regarding Peoria Unified School District's performance pay system for the 2020-2021 school year. Dr. Carter Davidson, welcome, sir.
Thank you, President Sandoval, members of the board, Dr. Reynolds, and guests. Tonight I'm here and always find this to be an exciting time to come and talk about performance pay, and in some cases even give you some information on our employee evaluation systems as well. To Ms. Airy's point, we have been survey rich over the past many months, so this item usually comes to you in October. It is now almost the middle of November, and please note that was done with reason, just to make sure that we honor all that information we're trying to collect back from our staff. So Tonight, you know the topic of the conversation, and here is what we're going to review. A little bit about statutory requirements, the 3 different plans that are available, and hopefully you've had a chance to review those. And I just also wanted to highlight and note that they all do look very similar to last year for a specific reason. We're going to talk about next steps, and of course, at the end, hopefully have an opportunity for a motion to move forward. So one might say, and I can tell you from the survey data, why in the world are we talking about performance pay? Why in the world do we have to do evaluation right now during the times of a pandemic? And the answer is very simple, because we are still required to do so by the state of Arizona. So please know I'm here tonight to talk to you about performance pay in particular, but this is something that needs to be approved every year by our governing board, and that we are focused tonight on Fund 12 in particular, which is the dedicated pot of money from the state that's geared towards performance pay for our teaching staff, our certified staff. And mind you, not all certificated employees, but the certain group of teachers. Also, we will spend tonight just reviewing the administrator site-based as well as district-based performance pay. And I also wanted to just make reference to that last bullet point there, where there are other resources that are used for some of our certified staff that are outside of that Fund 12. And I believe Ms. Myers and I talked about that last year as well. Mm-hmm. Please note, if you have any questions, just President Sandoval will tell me to stop as well, because I'll just keep rolling, so, okay. All right, sir. So on behalf of our certified staff, again, this plan was built and developed quite a few years ago, but we've continued to use it based on the feedback that we get from our staff. This year we had over 1,603 returning and eligible employees respond to our survey. It was a great response, higher than last year, and with an approval rate also higher than last year of 89% for us to continue this plan. There are still 3 components in the teacher performance pay plan. 33% of that pay goes to the performance classification, which is tied into the evaluation. 50% remains at the graduation rate of our district, and then that 17% is for the teacher or student learning objective. And I'll share with you that we have received feedback from our staff that this process is tedious, that it is feels like they're jumping through the hoops. And I guess on behalf of our team, I can understand why they say that, but I also know that this 17% is geared towards our staff working with their students to find some way, somehow, to measure that what they're teaching is making a difference in what our kids are learning. So I feel that this is an important piece. Not all districts have a student learning objective, but this is a place right now, in particular during this face-to-face, online, or a hybrid model, whatever it may be for our staff right now, that this is a great way for them to really see an outcome based on what they're doing. Some feedback from those 1,603 people, and I always like to give our board this information just about what are people saying, some pros and some cons to our performance pay plan. First of all, again, as I said a few slides ago, why do we even have to do it during a pandemic? And with that said, I know Mr. Eager is here, and for our staff out there that are watching this, our team is working hard, doing an incredible job, so I want to just thank them for their efforts. Some people have asked, can we just increase the performance pay? Can we just give more money? Can we change our standards due to COVID? Maybe we need to focus more on the professional expectations of our evaluation. Maybe we need to consider more of a career ladder aspect, go back to looking at how our teachers get acknowledged for other things outside of just this plan that the board's looking at tonight. In some cases, just remove the plan. Just give our staff the money and don't have anything available for them. There was a lot of comments about increasing our salary and how we need to do that here in our district. There was comments about looking at the socioeconomic status of our students and look at our performance pay plan and begin to maybe change that up based upon where our staff are working. And I think the last one, this is Carter's commentary in terms of summarizing, but it was really to show grace to our staff that are involved during this process. The term that was used was accommodate, make accommodations for our staff. So just some key things that I took away from that survey that I wanted to share with you tonight. We've spoken about our teacher effectiveness labels before, and this is that 33% of our performance pay that's dedicated to our teaching staff. And just wanted to highlight year over year, and we've had conversation about this effectiveness data. Please note again, this isn't just Carter or Peoria, for that matter, wanting to collect this data. I report this data to the state every single year, and they gave us no grace this past year on behalf of the pandemic, and they're not going to do it again. But I wanted to highlight the 1920 piece just because, you know, we did implement a new teacher evaluation model. You'll see that shift a little bit from highly effective and the effective and effective labels. We've talked before how, you know, sometimes our data is a little bit more skewed towards the highly effective piece. That did shift, and you could say, yeah, the pandemic made a difference, and it likely did. But no, I also believe our administrators and our teachers are involved in conversations about, coaching conversations about growing, about being better, not just focused in on filling in the circle on the evaluation tool. So I wanted to highlight that for you tonight. And in similar years, we do have a site-based administrative performance pay model that mirrors that of the teaching staff, and I just have that information there for you to review. I also wanted to provide the effectiveness labels of our administrators over the last few years. Again, you'll see that I do have to report those to the state. We had a shift towards the opposite direction this year over 1920 compared to 1819. But I still want to say that it is reflective of the hard work that our administrators are doing at the site level during this COVID time. Lastly, our district administrative plan, very much aligned with our teacher model and our site-based administrative model. So with next steps, depending upon, of course, the board approval tonight of these plans, would be to begin communication, to provide necessary training to impacted individuals, in particular those new to our district, fully implement the plans as given to you tonight, and then consider changes. I do believe that survey information is important to review. And one of the things that I hope to do, and as we find more time through this COVID experience, is to bring a team together to review what we've been doing, utilizing those suggestions that were given to us tonight, and think about what might be changing in the future. So with that said, I'll stand for any questions you may have, and then my last slide, President Sandoval, is just simply providing you a motion if that moves forward. So thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Comments, questions? Ms. Doan?
So this is very essentially what we've approved in the past. And I do understand the pandemic impact and that we have to go ahead with what it, and I like how you have at the end, you know, to perhaps change things up. And based, you know, on feedback, do you think that that's going to, I mean, I think this is the way we have to go. Do you think that's going to be understood well by the staff that it has to be this way for now, and that, you know, we can work through details later, maybe?
Thank you, Ms. Stone, and President Sandoval, members of the board. I do believe that is the case, Ms. Stone. Our staff are doing incredible things with our students right now, and I guess by keeping it the same, I believe they will appreciate that.
It's not one more thing to relearn.
Correct, and it's not just one more thing to it. And Dr. Reynolds and I and others have tried to make help our staff understand this isn't meant to be something difficult. We're trying to align all of our practices so that it's not something else and doesn't cause them additional angst.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Ms. Underhill?
Yeah, no, first of all, I just greatly appreciate the grace that you're already presenting with, because it is definitely a different kind of year for evaluation. A couple questions. One is just around the SLO. I know that they're typically submitted into the system and approved. I'm just wondering, with so much fluidity with students in and out, and with, I know, the many challenges students have had when they are strictly online, will there be opportunities for teachers to make adjustments to those SLOs, you know, once, if things change and they need to make adjustments?
Right. Ms. Underhill, members of the board, President Sandoval, we've worked very closely with our administrative team this year to give them some language to utilize with their staff as they're going through this process. We know, as you talked about, kids are coming and going based on COVID quarantines and a variety of things. We've, in many cases, asked our staff to please focus solely on the students that they know they have control of their,
Right.
quote, control of their learning, right? But really focus on those kids they know that they have direct impact on. So the desire is that, yes, there is a level of flexibility. We've also extended that time at certain campuses. You know, administrators have the ability to extend that time for the teacher-student learning objectives.
Okay, that's great. No, that's really helpful. I also just wanted to say that I know that our staff have continued to receive professional development, and the amount of technology and learning that they have been through and continue to go through to continue improving our virtual education, you know, for all of our students is immense. So I'm wondering, I know this is kind of set, but if there is a way to kind of accentuate that, what people have put in to basically learn a whole new model of learning in a lot of cases, as, you know, a component of this overall evaluation part, because that, I know for many people, has been like a whole second, you know, tier of teaching this year, so.
To your point, Ms. Underhill, I believe that with our evaluation tool focused more on coaching, that it will lead to that conversation between administrator and teacher, so that the outcomes are positive, right, on the efforts that our staff are putting in, because in some cases it's way different than they've ever done before. Even from the evaluation aspect, our principals are having to visit our classrooms in some cases and through a Teams meeting, right, to see how it's going and still utilize the tool that they have available to them.
No, yeah, I just want to make sure we're, you know, rewarding all that innovation as well, because it's not business as usual, that's for sure. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Pingerelli?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to go over, again, the graduation rate. Have we ever dropped below 90%?
Ms. Pingerelli, in my time, I don't believe that has happened.
Okay. And I know we've had discussion before on how the performance classification is 99% highly effective and effective. I've always pushed towards I really want to get the outstanding teachers something more, and that's what I've been pushing for. And I'd still like to see that at some point. And then I noticed for district administration, I mean, there's a breakdown for the certified and the site admin. Why wasn't there a breakdown for the district administration?
Sure. Ms. Pingerelli, President Sandoval, members of the board, I'll address the first comment, Ms. Pingerelli, regarding the highly effective versus the effective. That is a question that we do ask our team through that survey is, would you like to see more resources given through a performance pay model for the highly effective teacher versus the effective? And using the statistics from last survey, I didn't get a quantitative piece this year. I just looked at the qualitative data. We don't have enough participants that say separate us out, but it doesn't mean we can't continue to look for that. So that would be a piece that I would bring back to our committee. Okay. Regarding the district administrative piece, currently the state does not require that we report that data to them. So that's why I did not list it out separately. But certainly I have that available because the plan is built to mirror that. So I could certainly bring that back to the board.
And do you know how many employees we have at the district administrative?
For I would hate to speculate. It would take me a second to count. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. No, I would like to see it broken out for the site or for the district.
For the district, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. It would be a Friday report be okay, President Sandoval, for that? Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Pingerelli. Ms. Martinez, real quick, I just want to piggyback on one question that Ms. Pingerelli had. And we talk about, you know, how we kind of differentiate, you know, highly performing to performing, et cetera, and then even differentiate that from a compensation perspective. But I think, you know, which I think, yeah, I think those individuals that are performing at a high level, you know, what are maybe some ways that we can, you know, celebrate and reward them. But when we take a look at our district and its size and so many dynamics at every site, you know, how do you kind of add those dynamics in, whether Title I schools and, you know, low SES and, you know, IEPs, et cetera. I mean, there are many dynamics that I think need to be considered as well as you know, look into that question from Ms. Pingerelli and to understand, you know, how we do that in a way that, you know, is clear and certainly, equitable, across a district of our size. So anyway, just food for thought more than anything else.
Certainly.
Yep.
Thank you.
Ms. Sarah Martinez.
Thank you. This conversation is difficult because we are starting 10 feet backwards because our district can't compensate compared to our neighboring districts. That is heart-wrenching. That's one. We don't pay our staff, even our administrators, compared to our neighboring districts. So it is really difficult to have this conversation, and people's lives are impacted by this. So I do want to start with that. This year's an anomaly. I have to think to myself, as my 1/5 of the vote, what ownership do I have in putting our teachers and staff in a position where they're not successful? One example being teaching live students and virtual at the same time. That's my vote. I went into a decision-making thinking the hybrid or virtual in-person option was going to be one way, and with reality, it was a different way. I will take ownership of that, and our teachers were put in a lose-lose situation. So I have a hard time this year making such very clear guidelines of what is highly effective and effective. And I know that I've been a big proponent of not everybody's highly effective, and I do want to reward those. But this year happens to be a decision where the board needs to own some of the decisions that we did not set up our teachers for success. That is a fact. There were factors that contribute to that, but that is something we should own. So I do have a problem with, I don't want to make it easy where we're just throwing out, there needs to be accountability and some responsibility, and I know that when you walk through leading your administrators, there's that flexibility. So let me ask my question, which is in regards to state standards. What is the bare minimum we need to do to meet that statute?
Ms. Sahel Martinez, to clarify, when you say meet the statute, you're talking about evaluation or performance pay? Just
so you have presented information like the first or second slide that we have to do things. The board and the district has to move and provides the state mandate, per the state mandate, certain things. What is the bare minimum that we need to do?
for performance pay, the bare minimum would be to have a plan that incorporates the evaluation tool and the data that comes from student learning. So that's the bare, from a performance pay perspective, approval. Back in the day, we used to have to get it approved by the state. There is no process currently from that end. It also has to be given within a certain approval rating from our staff. So that's why I bring that to you as well. So those are the key components to a performance pay model.
Okay. So that's where I'm thinking if we can do the bare minimum and be able to compensate, because other things that our staff does not have control are the mandates by the state, students going in and out. That was one of my concerns of going in person, was the back and forth. That is no doubt going to impact student achievement, 100%. So I really want to think about, is there any more flexibility we could give in this model that you're presenting? As a board member, I've only been given one option, not on this space, not here's option A, we could go with this is traditionally what we've done, but in lieu of the current environment, here's option B, this would give us more flexibility. Why didn't we go that approach?
So to clarify, is your question, how come I didn't bring you an alternative to the one that I recommend?
Yes, that allows for more flexibility, because I'm just trying to think, how do we work through this year?
No, that's a perfectly fine question. I guess for me, knowing that this plan was built on last year's model, but ones in the past before, there certainly is a high degree of flexibility, without a doubt, and our principals have permission to work with their staff, in particular during this time, to to help them be successful, to coach them to be the best teacher and staff member they can be during this time. But I guess, Ms. Ceja-Martinez, using the data, using the information that I know that we've paid out to our staff, and to Ms. Pingarelli's point about still a very high amount of, a high percentage of our teachers being effective or highly effective, this model does give us the ability to compensate pretty leniently, I guess, compared to some other alternative models that I might bring to you.
Okay, I appreciate the candor. And I say that with grace because this year's is an anomaly. Next year, and as we move out of COVID, what that looks like, I would hope that we strive to compensate those that are highly performing. The last two comments I'm going to bring up, and this this comes from our students at the round table. When I asked, what are indicators of student success? They said attendance. So when I think about the SLO, and I think about the impact of student attendance and how it has there ever been conversations about having attendance and engagement part of a SLO when I think about how teachers should aligning their own goals to the strategic plan and showing up, attendance is one of them? Has there been any conversation about that topic?
Ms. Ceja-Martinez, again, just to clarify, you speaking about the attendance of the staff member, or the attendance of the students?
Students, because when I ask them what makes a successful experience, how do you know when your peers are doing well? How are you identifying if you're successful in a classroom? And we want our students to be successful. And they said attendance and engagement. And attendance impacts all of us. So I'm thinking about the SLO, the portion where you talked about that. Where does that play a role?
So I would probably refer back to the conversation that Ms. Underhill was having about the student learning objective and the students that are present. You know, in any given time, when our students aren't there or they are there as a teacher, right, we're still accountable for their learning, whatever that standard is we've chosen to teach, and we still need to see an outcome. In this particular case, during this time, I believe the teachers, without a doubt, are considering the attendance of their students, whether it's in person, face-to-face, or if they really themselves are sick. How do we navigate that? We work closely with our administrators to make certain that the students can still get that curriculum, whether it's online or Florida virtual, through Teams, in some cases with Dr. Bell's team through packets of work. So I believe, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't gone to ask a teacher this, but in just hearing conversations, without a doubt, I know they are mindful of the attendance of their students.
Thank you. Without a doubt, I know this is a difficult conversation this year with all the factors that we're dealing with. And part of our goal as a board is to attract and retain, and these types of decisions will have long-lasting impact. There aren't any options to consider, but I do ask that our administrators be trained with grace during this year as we review compensation and performance as they relate to livelihoods. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Ms. Ceja-Martinez. Dr. Davison, thank you very much. I think a lot of the questions that have come forth are good questions around, really the mindset of the district. As we move forward. I mean, our role here as a building, as a team, is to support those, out at the sites, in the field, et cetera. And everybody has said it. I mean, these are times that are very different. So I do appreciate being mindful of that and putting forth, a performance pay plan that allows for some level of autonomy in light of the fact that this is so fluid. And then you just spoke to, different ways that, our sites can measure success or not through Teams, the packets, et cetera, all that. So different ways to understand where a teacher is being, performing or highly performing, et cetera, right? So, but thank you again for that. So if no further questions, comments from the board, I do need a motion to approve. 10.3, the presentation and discussion regarding Peoria Unified School District's performance pay system for the 2020-2021 school year.
I move that we approve 10.3.
A second. Ms. Contra, we have a motion by Ms. Stone and a second for myself. Board members, please cast your votes. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, board members. Dr. Davidson, thank you very much, sir. Moving on to 11, discussion items, 11.1, Annual Valley Schools Financial Report. Ms. Michelle Myers. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Good evening, President Sandoval, members of the Governing Board, Dr. Reynolds. Thank you for the opportunity to present information regarding Valley Schools and the district's insurance groups as of June 30th, 2020. This evening, I will provide historical information regarding Valley Schools and the Peoria Unified School District and the liability insurance, workers' compensation, employee benefits, and management groups information for the year, as well as self-funded insurance considerations. Dr. Carter Davidson will also provide summary information regarding the district's annual benefits plan review, as well as employee wellness program. At the end of the presentation, we will both be available to answer your questions, and I always like to start with one of the 4 perspectives of the district's strategic plan is stewardship of community resources. Employee benefits, insurance, and risk management are all part of the strategic perspective to solidify and adhere to effective policies, practices, and accountability for district resources. The history of the Peoria Unified School District and Valley Schools goes back over 3 decades to the late 1980s when Paradise Valley Unified School District, Deer Valley Unified School District, and Peoria Unified joined together to obtain property and liability insurance through a self-insurance model. These districts subsequently formed Valley Schools Workers' Compensation Pool in 1995 and Valley Schools Employee Benefit Trust for employee medical, dental, and life insurance in 2005. This was the same year the Valley Schools Management Group was formed. The Valley Schools groups are separate legal entities from the school districts that they support and are not combined in any of the school district's financial reporting. Per Arizona Revised Statute, school district insurance pools are exempt from procurement, and in fiscal year 2017, all 4 Valley School groups began the process to formally incorporate and convert to Arizona not-for-profit corporations. Peoria Unified School District Governing Board did approve this conversion back on June 8th, 2017. In addition, the 3 founding districts have representation on the Valley Schools Management Group Board as well as the other 3 insurance group boards by appointing their chief financial officers to serve as board members. Each year, Peoria Unified makes contribution payments to the insurance groups for insurance, which include, let me start that again. Each year we make payments to the 3 insurance groups for insurance. Within Valley Schools, each district's payments and expenses, as well as net position, are all tracked and accounted for separately from the other member districts. In fiscal year 2020, you'll recall that we used $6 million of net position to offset contributions. In fiscal year 2021, we did not use any of our net position. The $6 million that was used last year in part was used to fund textbook adoption for English language arts. With self-insurance, the district maintains its own fund to cover the cost of claims, administration of benefits, and reimbursement rather than purchasing commercial insurance from a third-party carrier to cover those costs. Over time, this approach has been deemed to be less costly. Self-insurance generates savings by eliminating the profit margin of commercial insurers while designing the benefit plan that best meets the needs of the district. The risk the district retains for each insurance group is detailed on this slide, with liability at $1.5 million and property at $100,000, as well as workers' compensation at $750,000 and medical at $300,000 per individual. Peoria Unified purchases commercial policies in excess of these amounts. I mentioned earlier that in the late 1980s, Paradise Valley Unified School District, Deer Valley Unified School District, and Peoria Unified came together to obtain general liability insurance through a self-insurance model. The insurance groups provide property coverage for losses to vehicles, buildings, building content, equipment, and liability coverage for general lawsuits, auto errors, and emissions. In addition, there are services that are provided by Valley Schools that includes safety training and loss prevention, claims management, incident investigation, project management, as well as agency interface. Peoria Unified's Valley Schools Insurance Group, which is property and liability insurance, had a fiscal year 2020 contribution of $1.8 million and operating expenses by liability category totaling just over $1.7 million. The cost of reinsurance, which is purchased for an amount greater than the risk retained, was $1,113,874. Investment income totaled $174,393, and the change in market value amount was just over $210,000, which is the unrealized gain or loss on investments to date. From an accounting perspective, the net position at the beginning of the fiscal year was $7,592,215, and the ending net position at June 30th, 2020 was $6,952,000 and $317 rather. And moving on, the workers' comp group also includes the 3 founding districts and the Glendale Elementary School District, which was added in fiscal year 2019 for mandated workers' compensation insurance for employee injuries related to employment. The same services are available to the workers' compensation group, as is the case with the insurance group, with most services being managed in-house and a small portion being contracted. Net revenues at June 30th, 2020 were $1,595,477, and operating expenses totaled just over $1.4 million. Interest income was $172,000, and the unrealized gain or loss based on a change in market value was just under $229,000. Beginning and ending net position were $6,271,766 and $6,844,818, respectively. The financial summary does not reflect a number of open claims incurred and open with reserves for payment. It also is important to note that in the area of workers' compensation, sometimes there are payment commitments that go on for the lifetime of the injured party. We do review claims and trends that impact our workers' compensation and the net position from year to year. There's also a focus on prevention and safety, as well as an effort to change behaviors and to hone areas for training for our staff. When the Valley Schools Employee Benefit Group was formed, each member district and employer determines their own medical plan design. Each district knows what's best for their employees. That includes copays and maximums. Valley Schools provides an underwriter to assist districts with the step-by-step process to evaluate premium costs. Peoria Unified's budget team and governing board approves annual benefit and rate changes each year during the springtime. Valley Schools Employee Group is nonprofit with in-house services and no external management companies. The group's membership has grown, and currently they serve 25 school districts and 3 municipalities. Employee benefits provided include medical, dental, life, vision, short-term disability, accident, critical illness, and medical bridge. Services are also provided including United Healthcare's network and claims administration, compliance training, and the WellStyles program. Each member ultimately determines the organization's plan design, and all member districts only pay for their actual costs, which are accounted for separately by district or entity. Each district also has the flexibility for alternative funding through the use of net position, which can increase over time from year to year if you have good claims and experience. And again, Peoria Unified has taken advantage of that strategy. In fiscal year 2020, Peoria Unified made $22,605,748 in contributions for both employer-paid and employee voluntary deduction benefits. Total operating expenses totaled $27,317,075, with $20,445,985 of the expenses being related to paid claims. Interest income was $708,387, and unrealized gain or loss from a change in market value was $445,497. Beginning net position was $20,257,651, and the ending net position was $16,700,208. And you'll note it's not a net change of $6 million. We used $6 million of our net position, but through claims experience through the year, the difference in our final net position at June 30th is actually not $6 million lower. It's also important to note that the recommendation for self-insured entities, for self-insured governments, is that that net position should be between 25 and 50% of annual claim liability and expenses. Each year, we do a per member per month is a PM comparison to Paradise Valley and Deer Valley, and the average for all Valley schools employers. Peoria Unified is consistent with last year and lower than the comparison entity metrics. PM equates to each human life, or you might you've heard it referred to as belly buttons. I like to say each human life served, as well as employees and dependents. Peoria Unified did not have a premium increase for several years. You'll recall we had many years of excellent claims experience, and we did have an increase in fiscal year 2020 where the premium increase was 4.2%, and for fiscal year 2021 it was 2.5%. Self-insuring means that school districts can get more access to detailed information and data metrics to make decisions to better understand how their benefits are used. This data should then be used to look for opportunities to more appropriately or in a capitalized way to manage the plan and the plan benefits. This data is available to Peoria Unified and all self-insured entities. And in recent years, we at Peoria Unified have had a renewed focus on our district self-insurance employee benefits plan and the goal to continue to improve benefits to ensure they are world-class. And that we are regularly asking the question, are our copays and is our coverage comprehensive and appropriate, and is it competitive? Peoria Unified is working with a compensation consulting firm as part of phase 2 of the district's compensation study. This work will include job descriptions, position reclassifications, and benefit analysis of what we offer compared to like districts and surrounding municipalities. The goal is to better capitalize on opportunities to enhance our benefits as a component of compensation, and to not only compete against other employers, but to compete against ourselves. 3 ongoing areas of focus include benefits as a component of compensation to attract and retain the best employees. Reserve and fund balance management, which you've heard me talk about at length over the last couple of years, as well as containing the cost of the plan. Cost containment, can be enhanced through wellness programs and stakeholder input into the governance of the plan, as well as identifying trends that can increase costs. Data analysis and comparisons to other employers can assist the district in plan design, and recommendations related to co-pays and benefit packages as a whole. Each November, Peoria Unified has the opportunity to do a health plan review with Valley Schools. I will comment next on Valley Schools Management Group regarding third-party plan administration. And then Dr. Carter Davidson will join me to speak a little more in depth regarding the health plan review that we just had and have each year, as well as to share information about the Well Styles platform and how that has benefited our employees, and actually we're seeing that it's providing traction to lower costs. Valley Schools Management Group formulates, develops, and administers the day-to-day management of the Valley Schools Insurance Group, Valley Schools Workers' Compensation Group, and Valley Schools Employee Benefit Group on behalf of the participating districts in the areas of investment, payroll, claims administration, rate setting, and the procuring of goods and services. Valley Schools Management Group also has broad financial responsibilities for the 3 insurance entities. What I will say as well is each group does pay Valley Schools Management Group an administrative fee for those services. In addition, during the 2020 fiscal year, the Valley Schools Management Group Board consisted of 8 members. And as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, 3 of the 8 are CFOs of the 3 founding districts, where there is representation from those districts in the day-to-day decisions related to the management group and the other 3 insurance groups as a whole. In fiscal year 2020, there was just over $6.2 million of contributed revenue from the member districts to manage the workers' compensation, insurance, and employee benefits groups. The largest expense was staff salaries and benefits for group administration, as well as consulting fees for underwriters and actuaries. The annual Valley Schools Management Group budget and audited financial statements are approved by the Board of Directors, and the Valley Schools Management Group is a not-for-profit corporation, and in fiscal year 2020, a small portion of the group's net position was used to offset approved expenses for the year. I will now turn the floor over to Dr. Carter Davidson, who will share additional information.
Thank you, Ms. Myers, and Governing Board. Thank you for this opportunity. As Ms. Myers just stated, we recently had a summary review of what's going on in our benefits plan, and I just wanted to give you a few highlights. First and foremost, there is a reduction of 6.8% of our total paid per member per month overall in our claim, so that's something we can celebrate and highlight. With that said, though, offset is an increase in pharmacy spend by almost 26%. So certainly we see the needs of our staff, and that has increased. The 3 main areas for spend in our amongst our current covered group would be invertebra or disc disorders, hypertension, and diabetes. And what we learned from working alongside Valley Schools and United Healthcare that was with us that day is that many of those items or the scenarios inside each of those 3 categories can be supported and changed through lifestyle change. So as Ms. Myers talked about, our wellness platform and the Well Styles opportunity that our employees have in front of them, not only do they have an opportunity to earn some additional resources that can be used in their to support their health plan by doing certain things, by earning points through the wellness effort, they can change their lifestyle, right, and therefore in turn become healthier to provide the services they need to for our students. The wellness platform right now, and I think we had talked with my last presentation about engagement, 34%, according to the metrics that United Healthcare uses, 34% of our staff are seen as engaged or highly engaged. So what I wrote down that day on this side of the paper, not this, was simply we need to continue to push our Well Styles platform. We know it makes a difference, and we need to further engage our employees through that. The 3 core areas that we can continue to lean into are behavioral health supports for our staff, their dependents, as well as their spouses. Virtual visits. The use of the virtual visit has increased, but we can continue to push that. And just last year, for this plan model, we have what they call the second option or second opinion, and that's an opportunity free of charge for any of our members to seek that second opinion before going into some type of procedure or starting a new medicine, for example, but it's free of charge and it's highly recommended. We have seen savings when our employees do utilize that feature. And just a couple more side notes. I found this statistic to be interesting. 83 people, 83 out of the thousands that we support through our plan accounted for 44% of our total spend. And so it just makes you realize that we, overall have what I would guess is a pretty healthy group in our plan. But we also know there's just things you can't account for sometimes with health concerns, right? With that said, out of our 10 highest claims this past year, 5 of them were some type of cancer. And those things you just can't plan for, you certainly will try to support. So it was a good opportunity to converse with Valley Schools and United Healthcare, and I think you'll see us just continue to work with Ms. Ari and her team and that communication pathway for our wellness platform. Thank you.
Ms. Myers,
Yes,
Dr.
thank
Davidson,
you.
thank you both very much. Questions, comments? Ms. Dunn?
No, I don't think so. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dunn. Ms. Underhill?
I just appreciate the thorough review as usual, and I am glad to see that the Well Styles platform is, up and running, and that we're starting to see some results from that. Because obviously, those underlying conditions are definitely causing some real strain now. So it's good to see that we're doing something that is not only just healthcare, but is preventative care as well. So thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Pingerelli?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pingerelli. Ms. Martinez?
Thank you so much for the comprehensive review. I do have one question, one comment. Based on the benefits that we offer, has there been an analysis on those benefits of what we're not utilizing? And if so, what came up?
Okay.
Ms. A. Martinez, members of the board, President Sandoval. We typically have that conversation in the early spring of each year when we sit with Valley Schools and members of United Healthcare and talk about, say, Martinez, what are those things that are getting us the biggest bang for our buck? What are some things we should consider? Of course, they come with things that might interest us, but as Ms. Meyer stated, it's really up to us to come back to them saying, these are the things we want to do on behalf of our employees and the benefits that we offer. In terms of what we take away, the interesting piece to that is, over my time, I haven't seen us really remove a lot of things. Matter of fact, we are usually presented with other ideas that don't cost us. It's part of our Valley School partnership, and I'll use one right now that I've had to use this year, and that's InfoArmor, and that's that identity protection scenario that we provide to our employees free of charge. So I think Valley Schools is looking for ways to give to the employees on our behalf, more so than telling us we should remove things. I do know in conversations we do talk about, here's another statistic, ready for this one? Roughly 70% of our claims are based on dependents or spouses of our staff. To me, that's a stat you have to consider. So certainly, do we need to look at the offerings that we provide, or how do we incentivize people to be on our plan or off? Those are some things that I know we need to talk about this coming semester. But that's at least what I can add, Ms. Myers.
Well, thank you. And you may recall on March 12th, 2020, we brought forward our benefit recommendations last year, and we actually, as part of the January renewal and presentations to the budget team, we did make a handful of adjustments. Some were required. For instance, IRS requirements for high deductible health plans can cause us to make a modification, but we did make a change also with our tier PPO specialist copay. based on analysis and use and opportunities. And there was also the discussion and recommendation to phase out the high deductible health plan buy-up plan in the 21-22 school year. So that's an example where we did some data analytics and actually talked about those recommendations, and we'll continue to do that from year to year.
Hearing that and being in the finance world and the role that high deductible plans and access to HSAs, it breaks my heart. But I also recognize the environment that we're in, cause for how do we meet the needs of all our employees. And if that is something that is being removed, I understand. I appreciate the comment about including the families with all the inclusive work that we are doing. I would like to continue that conversation. How can our benefits be more inclusive in our diverse staff members as you continue on this path, and asking them what need do they need that are not being covered. So it's something to consider. And the last thing is when we talk about engagement and increasing the engagement, and I hear the 30s percentage, but then we removed the 5K event, which it was annuals twice, and then it was removed. What ideas are top of mind in this environment that we're looking at to increase engagement for wellness? Because wellness plays a role even in retirement and how you spend your dollars, but.
Good question, Ms. Martinez. And right now, per my previous comment, working and living inside a pandemic certainly brings some challenges to new and engaging things for employees because typically you would do those in a face-to-face scenario. You know, we just, an example of a change is our employee health fair. Usually that is offered to our employees. We hold it at Centennial High School. We get thousands of people to come. This year we have to look at a different way of offering that. We did set up a most recent experience for our employees to come get a free flu shot. So we're trying to look at ways to manipulate the points that they would otherwise get during that wellness piece. I know that we have wellness champions. We are expected to have one at each site. Sometimes it's not as easy as it sounds, but our wellness champions are there to support different activities at the campus level that might be meaningful to that particular campus, such as a fun run or something along those lines, and those can be worked out through Ms. Davis's department. We also work with Ms. Kendall Taylor over at Valley Schools as she's giving us and working with us to come up with creative ideas. But Ms. Martinez, that's all I can give at this point. I'm certain that that team is working through some other items.
Some things that I've seen in corporate world, virtual benefit fairs, where they have all the vendors of all the collective teams show up on virtual benefit fairs, and everybody has an opportunity to answer on a platform. We use on demand 24, but virtual platforms seem to be the way that I experience in corporate world as we speak.
If I can just add one more piece to that, I also know that through the Valley Schools arena, they offer a variety of mindfulness classes, yoga, different experiences that our employees can sign up for on their own time as kind of a type of professional development that's geared toward sound mind, spirit, body, that
Excellent.
type of thing.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Martinez. Dr. Davidson, the classes that you just spoke about, those are virtual? Yep, perfect. So real quick, Ms. Myers, Dr. Davidson, one thing I want to say is thank you. I know over the years, we've always talked about ensuring that we are providing world-class benefits to all of our associates. And by being intentional about that, by partnering, with, I think it was a third-party organization, if I'm not mistaken, to really take a look at the efficacy or just the impact that, our benefits have. Are they relevant, to the 4,000 plus associates that we're responsible for? So I do appreciate that. Thank you very much. No other questions, comments? Ms. Myers, Dr. Davidson, thank you both very much. Okay, moving on to 11.2, health data update. We do have a public comment tied to this line item, so we will listen to Mr. Moss in the district on 11.2, and then Mr. Eager. I will listen to yourself before board comments, okay? Thank you, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Sandoval, members of the governing board. I'm here again each couple weeks to give you a little bit of an update in terms of where we are on our health data. I bring my little friend with me every week since they said I looked like him last time, so I gotta keep it up now. I think anyone who is watching the news, listening to the news, reading a newspaper, reading anything realizes that everyone's talking about the data going up. That information or that trend is showing up in our data also. As I've given you now on a weekly basis, because I think it's getting the changes are becoming too quick. We have to get information to you more quickly. We'll give you on those Friday report information. But this is the last 3 weeks of data. You can see cases have increased, and that red square there at the bottom is somewhat alarming, right? Percent positive has also increased, 5.87 to 6.71. Our hospitals continue to report that things are going up, and we read about this all the time in the newspaper. You hear it in the news on a weekly basis. Probably the bigger pictures that are important is when you look at a longer trend. We talk about a picture being worth 1,000 words, and this picture talks about the changes that have occurred in the last 8 or 9 weeks. You can see the continuation of going up. There is not much information that is telling us that this will not continue. We think it probably will continue. And so we're taking information and beginning to talk with the county, and I'll click through the slide. This is the percent positive. It continues to go up also. But we're working with the county, and we're working with our medical advisory team, presenting this information to them and having a conversation about what are our next steps. How can we continue to do things? How do we continue to mitigate the situation? What kind of things can we do to keep our children safe, keep our staff safe, all of those things as we go through. Here's the hospitalizations in the process. And so we're reacting to the data. We're moving forward. We're beginning to have conversations about what happens, and all that process is moving forward. So I did add one additional piece of information for you, and that is I talked last week or last time I was here about the dashboard that we have that brings up the number of active cases that we update on a regular basis. And currently there are 35 active cases in the district. And active, again, means that that is the individual who was ill and are still in the isolation phase of the illness. And so you can see how the data has changed, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Moss. Before we get into board comments and questions, Mr. Eager.
Don't start that timer yet. Again, President Sandoval, members of the board, Superintendent Reynolds, and Cabinet. My name is Frank Eager. I'm the Vice President of the Peoria Education Association. I'm here to let you know we polled our members about this whole COVID dashboard information. And one thing we let you know is that 79% of the people want the metric, one metric, like originally what we were told in the beginning, to know if we're gonna go virtual or not. Not the new way of having multiple in the red. It's one thing we really like to have that still happen that way. 95% want more of a running total of cases. If you look at our dashboard a little bit, it kind of shows something, but it's a week delayed. I know I've talked to Dr. Renz a little bit about this, but there's some other districts out there that give a better running total than we do. Higley is a great example of that. They have cases that are active and people who have recovered. So it gives them more of a stance of what's happening at each school, which would be kind of nice to see. And again, 91% want updates more frequently on the dashboard. It's kind of, you know, as you're a teacher in the district, you get all these letters about these kids are being quarantined and blah, blah, blah is going on. And then you go look at the dashboard. In my school, it says 1. And at Sunrise, I think I've gotten that letter 5 times this week about kids being quarantined, stuff like that happening. I'd like a little more, I think also as a parent of kids who attend the district, it would be nice to have a little more update on that board. And I know the cabinet works extremely hard. I know they work long hours, and I totally respect that. But as we see numbers rising, during this time, a lot of teachers are very much on edge about it. When we were originally on virtual, this is where the numbers were originally. And now we're kind of going back there, and we're still staying in the school, and we're seeing districts around us going back to virtual. Perez Valley just committed that today. The one thing I'll ask is, are teachers being part of the conversation? Are you talking to us about what's going on in schools? What are we seeing? Stuff like that. It's one thing we want to be. We hear these numbers, the statistics going on a daily basis, but we really want to be part of that. And I really respect COVID fatigue. I feel for that parent whose child was, quarantined twice. I get it, but I haven't at a restaurant since March. I haven't. I have a mom and dad. I have a dad who's got congestive heart failure. I have a mom who has diabetes. Every time I'm around them, I'm scared I'm going to kill them. Every time. And it could be fear, as I've heard people say before. It could be whatever it could be. But, this is a hard time we're all living under, and we all need to kind of work together to get through this. That includes the teachers, administration, parents, and everybody. And we just, as an association, want to make sure our voices are heard. And I know more than just teachers out there, part of that association, also want to be heard. That's something that's constant conversations all the time. So we do ask that. Maybe make the dashboard a little more clear. Maybe have people who actually do recover from cases so we can see where more people have been hit. That'd be a nice thing to see as well. Again, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Eager. And, thank you for your courage to also talk about, your personal life as well. I appreciate that. Board members, comments, questions? Ms. Stone?
I do, and I appreciate that, Mr. Eager. That was some of the point I wanted to make here. So our hospitalizations have remained flat. And I think, I don't know if we can actually do that, but can we post whether or not we have hospitalizations from our district? I mean, not people in general, but from the school itself? Can we post that, whether there's anybody in the hospital?
I believe we've had that conversation before, and we would recommend that we not post that, given that many times, as Mr. Eager pointed out, when you have just a very few cases, it becomes easier to identify who the student or staff member is. And so we want to be really careful that we don't divulge too much information.
Well, can we at least put it like something in the pad? I don't know, it can be not quite up to date or something like that. I don't know, something to reassure people.
We can look at it.
See if we can do a piece that'll help. I really do think a lot of the spike is because we are watching things so hard now. When people were at home, they weren't taking their temperatures every day or being monitored for as much as they are now that the young people are going out. And I think we're having more, we're looking at it harder. And the cases are spiking because of that, but the rate for hospitalizations has not, that hasn't climbed. So that means, yeah, like Mr. Eager mentioned, the recovery rate would be really good to have on there, and how many people, have been able to come back or things like that. I don't know, something more encouraging than frightening, because we need that too. We need that. And I know, from some of the emails I've gotten, some of the teachers are quite frightened, and they're really worried about being in the position they're in. And I think a little bit of reassurance from the district is in order, because when you see that spike, you can say, oh, no, it's going to grow, everybody's, going to die or whatever. But I think the reassurance in the data is where we need to go with our district to reassure people how, and to just be perfectly honest, to keep it, everything that we can, as up to date as possible. And perhaps, I don't know, something about trying to be able to reduce the amount of quarantines, because the kids, I mean, they're wearing their masks, if they're social distancing and stuff. I don't know what we can do about that. It's just a thought. If we could look into that and in personal situations, as far as somebody that's had a test and things like that, that can't go on the dashboard or anything, obviously. I just would like to see look into that. But I really would like to see something encouraging on the dashboard, not just the bad figures, but some good ones too. That's what I had to say.
Thank you, Ms. Stone. Ms. Underhill?
Yes, well, thank you again for presenting the information and for keeping us updated. As a classroom teacher, I know that I feel that, angst that my colleagues feel every day as things continue and people are wondering, are we going to, change and those kinds of things. So I do recognize that uncertainty and that concern. And Mr. Eager, I do understand. I have my own dad who's just coming off a round of chemo, so I totally understand that feeling of, just making sure that we're doing everything that we can to keep them safe, and just that sort of constant, I guess, fatigue, like you said, of when are we going to get through this. A couple of things come to mind, because when we closed and then when we reopened, I feel like through this whole piece, we have definitely learned some things, and we have also grown in how we're living with this virus. So a couple of things that come to mind are, I'm wondering, what are some of the conversations that are being had in the community, and I know what our medical community is scheduled to meet, but just around evidence around in-school transmissions, because I see that we've seen a tick up, which you could say coincides when school started, but a lot of other things started as well. And I think one thing I've learned as a classroom teacher, and having seen the kids go through the transition of online and in school, is that it was a very large struggle for very many children and very many families. So I guess I just want to make sure that when we're thinking about the changes that we're going to make, I want to make sure that we recognize we have significant protocols in place that have been, in large part, working fairly well, even though I know they're very onerous at times, especially for kids that have been quarantined back to back. But I also want to say that I believe even more now that school is absolutely so essential. And so I want to make sure that whatever we're doing, we're really looking at not only, how are things working in the schools, but what conversations are being had for what we're doing in the rest of our community to ensure that our schools can stay safe and stay open. So I guess I'm wondering about the evidence about in-school transmission. I'm also wondering about conversations about our state and what the rest of our community is going to do to help our schools stay open. And I'm just curious if people have comments on that.
No, thank you for that, Mrs. Underhill. You're right. We are meeting with our medical advisory team early next week, and those are some of those questions to be asked. The challenging piece that we face when it comes to schools and the impact that we're seeing either on our students or our staff is that there's no way for us to accurately measure the asymptomatic person, right? So the only data that we have are symptomatic, right? People who have shown symptoms or have gone and gotten tested and it shows that they're positive. And so that's the data that we have to use. And I think as I meet with superintendents, everyone is seeing very similar data in that students are not, they're not getting sick at school. It's coming from other areas to school because we're not seeing the community spread within the school when a child is when a child or an employee tests positive. So it's balancing those things. And so to your point that you mentioned, that's why when we look at the benchmarks and we work with principals and we work with schools that are in red areas, in all areas, it's looking at all of that data. And that's been our consistent message from the very, very beginning, is to tell the whole story and making sure that we're looking at all of the data. Because it's as it rises and you see the color go from yellow to red, it's alarming.
Appreciate that. And, I guess I feel like, as we kind of get through this, we need to continue to have those conversations and then just continue to lean on, our leadership as well to figure out, what else are we doing in our community? What other measures are we willing to take so that we can, continue to mitigate this, continue to educate our children, and continue to support our families through our public schools. So I guess that's my soapbox. But yeah, I appreciate that. And I look forward to our, continued dialogue with our medical advisory committee, with the state and with the county, so that we can, find some collaborative solutions to continue to living through this virus the best that we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Underhill. Ms. Pingerelli?
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, I understand the angst that people have, I think we all have somebody close that has issues that we're concerned about keeping them safe. But I also know that face-to-face instruction is the very best for our students. I know that we cannot go, the students have to stay virtual if they're virtual now until the end of the semester. If anybody wants to go virtual, though, during the semester, can they go? So if they're on campus, but now they're nervous and they want to go virtual, is that a possibility?
Yes. In fact,
Okay.
we asked our families to, for, I think, this is, right, the frustrating piece for everyone, I think. For the third time, we've asked them to let us know again what their wishes are for the second semester.
Okay.
And that was last Friday, I believe. We asked them to let us know that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pingerelli. Ms. Sam Martinez?
Oh, gosh, this topic. It is alarming for a reason, because we should be taking it seriously. These benchmarks were created at the top to give us some information for appropriate guidance. Hence, we put together and empowered you with the medical task force. The board is continuing to receive more information, more communication, and I'll start with the communication piece. As a parent, it is alarming. I get an email almost every other day, it feels like, and I can't tell heads to tails between all these letters, so I will start there because it is raising awareness, but at the same time, my spouse tells me, should we be taking my son out of school? And I know parents and every household is having this conversation. So let me start there with all the letters, and you and I and have these conversations constantly. We're trying to be transparent, but it's still causing confusion. What can we do better? How can we pivot in saying, based on what we've talked about, I'll just stop there. What can we do better on this communication with all these letters?
I'll look over at our facilitators of our COVID response team and ask if they've got any observations from that.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, thank you for that. So when we first reopened our schools and kind of began the process of putting together our COVID response team and how are we going to handle each and every case and how are we going to communicate, we hadn't even sent the first letter about the first case, and we were already hearing from staff members and community members saying, well, you're going to notify us of every case now, aren't you? And I should mention that the county does not mandate that we notify our community of every single case. They require that we notify them notify if you're a close contact formally with a letter, but not for every case. And so we assured our community and our staff at the time, of course, we will be transparent and share with you every time that we have a case. As you have seen, those cases increase depending on which site you have students. You may have times that you're getting quite a few notifications. So it's striking that balance on being transparent and informative and not contributing to that fear. And so the CRT has had conversations and discussions on how do we look to change that when it's an appropriate time, or kind of a natural break to maybe look at some of that communication, and maybe it's that you build out the dashboard, as we've heard some comments, in a little bit of a different way and direct your community there each time rather than ongoing letters. And so those are conversations that we're having, and including principals in much of that as well, because they also get that feedback and have provided that to us. So we're taking a look at that. We have, over the course of the last couple months, modified our communication, so they actually look different today than they did when we sent the very first letter. We keep making them clearer, shorter, just to be more concise, and then there's now notifications if it's a school's first case, the second case, the third case, so a little bit different each time to kind of provide as much as we can without violating HIPAA, and making sure we're still informing them in a timely manner. So we keep getting feedback and keep looking for ways to improve that.
Appreciate that insight, and it is a tough balance of being transparent. I think we've said before we can never over-communicate in this environment. But to the comment that we heard this evening, and I also see on some social media that I've received as well, is the letters and our effort to be transparent on the dashboard don't match up. What is preventing us from being succinct with those numbers, and then in addition to maybe even considering a different board, a different district like Higley as an example, and I haven't seen that one. And the only way I know is people bring information to me of other school districts, because I don't have the time to review 220 districts in the state of Arizona. So what's preventing us?
So President Sandoval, Mrs. Ceja Martinez, I would say we can always look to improve our dashboard. Right now, I will tell you probably the one thing that is hindering us being able to update that more frequently, it's a human capital piece. We are just spending countless hours, 7 days a week, just on our response as a team and our communication as a team. And so keeping up with that and making sure the notifications and the website or the dashboard are updated simultaneously is a human resource issue right now. You want to add to that, Dr. Davidson?
Ms. Ceja Martinez, President Sandoval, members of the board. The other thing that I think, to Ms. Aries' point, just outside of human capital, is sometimes we are notified of a phone call that maybe a principal receives or a school nurse receives, or a brother of a student came in and said, oh, my sibling is ill. So then we as a CRT begin to work through that type of process with the school administrators, but the items that you see online and this on our platform, I'm forgetting what it's called all of a sudden, but those dashboard, thank you, sir. Those are based on confirmed cases. So the other thing that we just always have to be mindful of is there's a lot of stuff happening at each campus, but we have to really only put out the confirmed case piece. So that sometimes might also have there might be a little disconnect in that data set across each of our schools.
Can we make that dashboard more upfront on our school page? It does take me some time to locate the tab of the return to school and then just put it front and center. That would be grateful, as I've received that feedback. Some other information as those letters continue to go out, and we have no evidence that it's going to slow down anytime soon. President Sandoval had brought up in the past about a static banner of resources for social and emotional, maybe testing, where are we at on that static communication attached to all these letters? Because people are reading them. That's how we know.
President Sandoval, Mrs. Saya Martinez, we can, to address your first question, we can absolutely look to move or add some additional links to get to where we have that dashboard located on our return to school page, in announcements or something from the homepage of our website, so we can explore that. With regard to adding some of those social emotional pieces, I will tell you what we have found to be most effective with that is the work of our principals in going through each and every case. And so I'm, probably the broken record that's always reminding, everyone who will listen that each of these numbers that you see is a real personal story. And our team spends quite a bit of time on these numbers, on these individuals, working with them through whatever they need as part of that story. And that's through our principals, who are also, I should mention, spending countless hours on each of these cases, serving our families, being kind of the liaison of communication from our team, finding out what they need, connecting them to resources. So we have found that to be extremely valuable as part of our communication response, and that's just not the tangible thing that you'll see in the form letter or that you will hear probably people sharing about, as part of our response. As far as like our student support line, we're trying to make a concerted effort to be reminding people and sprinkling that through all of our, communication through social media, through our parent insider that we send out weekly, and highlighting that we can absolutely enhance that as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and Ms. Sarah Martinez, thank you for bringing that up. I think one of the things that we talked about, Ms. Sarah, was, and I get it, from a platform that we use, meaning Outlook, right? There are some, I guess, adaptability challenges to add, a template, like something that you send out via constant contact, et cetera, where there's a little more flexibility and being a little more creative in doing so. But there was another platform that I believe our parents receive. I don't think it's Sway. It was, if it is, then where that had more ability, more technical ability to be able to have, whether it's on the bottom or the side or top, whatever, where it just had those static links to a hotline, to mental wellness, et cetera, kind of some of those hot topics that we're confronted with today. Is that still an option, I guess, is my question.
President Sandoval, yes, and Sway is, you're right, that is the format that we currently use for our parent communication that they receive, bless you, weekly.
Okay, and we have those, kind of that promo area.
We are rotating that through. We can make it static with each one. We are, through analytics, able to track where people are clicking through with those, and we have found that actually keeping it static doesn't tend to have the best return for us, in that bumping it up to the top, but doing it not every time, but periodically to catch their attention tends to be a more effective way to grab people. But we can look at placing it potentially in both, and maybe keeping it static at the bottom. That also shows us if people are scrolling to the bottom. Some of our analytics will show us that, but we can look to maybe do a combination of both.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, because I think, if we talk about micro moments and a situation that an individual's in at the particular time that they receive the communication, that link may be important to them at that moment. Mm-hmm. Even though the numbers may be low, but I think it's important to do what we can as a district to make sure that we leverage all of our communication channels and contact points to communicate the resources across the district. So, but I do appreciate you looking into it. Yeah.
Great point, President Sandoval. There's no way to over-communicate those resources. I received some personal phone calls from parents, and then I'm starting to see the emails around the trend where they say, well, I wore my masks, I did my hand washing, and my son or daughter are coming home, and why am I being punished for being home and having to quarantine? So I'm concerned that we're leaving out the heart-to-heart conversation with our students, and we're not, what tools and resources can we offer our parents, how to communicate with your child when they do have to quarantine, or when they do see their friends sick, things like that. Because this is not a child's fault. Definitely, these are the result of decisions that we are making to keep them safe. And that is my concern, that these children our students feel like it's their fault when they've been doing everything they're supposed to be doing. So where are we on offering resources so that our parents feel supported in having a conversation with our children, and that our students don't feel like this is their fault?
So in our process, right, every single family is contacted. Our principals, our school staff are doing an extraordinary job working through this. And so from the site level, principals and teachers working out as a personal experience, having a child who was quarantined for 14 days and seeing what that looks like and the support that's there. So our schools are doing a wonderful job in these very challenging times to provide those supports.
Okay. Is there, I don't want to say care package, but is there, when I look at other nonprofits that support kids, they give tools to parents, like one-eye templates to speak to. This is how you would talk to your children if you're talking about XYZ. Are we thinking about that for our parents?
We can absolutely check in with our SEL team and see what resources that they're providing.
Okay, thank you for that. Another comment, Ms. Underhill talked about the transmission is not happening on our campus, it's happening outside. Where's our conversation with our city officials, our support system? Our goal here, we're doing our best to keep our kids in school. And according to the data, it's not being transmitted while kids are at school, it's happening outside. So where's the role and scope that we're having this partnership conversation with our city officials?
So we're in contact with our city officials regularly, and I think you can see a concerted effort from the state, from Maricopa County, from city, from the school district in really trying to encourage our community as a whole to utilize the mitigation strategies that we're providing, that we're recommending.
So I know our county has a county mandate for masks, which perceives to be helping because we're not transmission, and there's not a lot of evidence to show. I'm just looking for more support from our city officials. And if we're going to stay open, we need their help. I want a more directive, clear message to our city officials. And it's great that they're sending emails, but what are they doing more? What's on the docket? What does that conversation sound like?
Well, I don't work for the city of Peoria.
Right.
I work for
Well, I'm just saying,
Peoria
like,
Unified.
what are you, you said you're meeting with them. What is being proposed to garnish their support and influence?
Well, we work on a regular basis to make sure that we are a team and that we have a consistent message. But I don't know specifically what the cities are doing to support that messaging.
Have we submitted any asks of them?
We have, other than the teamwork that we've done, even the partnerships, the city of Peoria specifically were tremendous partners. We brought them here to help us out when we talked about our providing that care for families when we needed that in school support. But we can reach out again and find out for you what strategies they're using.
I appreciate that. They were helpful. I don't want to discount the work that they've done. They were very supportive in providing that mobile and that internet access for our kids. So by all means, I don't want to discount all their efforts they have done. Now we're seeing a new environment where cases are going back up. And so we don't live in silos, we intertwine, and we need all hands on deck. And so that's what I'm looking for, is we need some city support so that we can keep our kids coming to school. And if the evidence shows that the spread is happening outside our walls, we can only do so much. One more piece of information is with supplies. Where are we at with PPE? I know at one point I sent you an email. Our warehouse, are we in good order so that we can maintain hand sanitation, things like that?
Thank you.
And I just want to make sure, again, we got to be real careful.
Okay.
That
Topic idea.
we're talking about, but We could absolutely provide that information in a Friday report.
Perfect. That will work for me. Those were the concerns. We're seeing the numbers. We decided as a board to follow those benchmarks to go into person. My last question is, what are those numbers to go back to virtual? What are we looking at? What does it need to be? All red? 2 out of the 3? What are we looking at?
So the county guidance currently, as Mr. Moss pointed out earlier, was when we hit our first red benchmark, that we began to start having those conversations about what it would look like for our community to return to virtual learning. The current recommendation from the county is when we hit the third red, when we hit all 3 red benchmarks. But again, from a district perspective, I think it's critical that we continue to look at all the data that's out there. We continue to look at the data within our schools. We continue so that we can tell a whole picture. I don't think, and these are some of my questions for our medical advisory team next week, is the relationship between the 3 benchmarks. I think one question that I hear frequently is, well, what happens if one is like red hot, right? And the other ones are creeping up slowly. Is there a scenario where it wouldn't require all 3 benchmarks to be in the red in order to return to a virtual environment? And I think, again, as we continue to use the data and look at the data and make sure that we're following the data, those are questions that we're going to have to answer as we continue to monitor our situation.
Thank you. And my only other, just a comment, is to consider, as these numbers are changing rapidly, that we maybe do special board sessions, even if it's virtual from our home, like we've done in the past, to get caught up on our own district numbers of what that conversation sounds like. Just something to consider. That's it.
And we have, as Mr. Moss mentioned in his presentation, we will be providing the board weekly updates in our weekly reporting to you, so you get that data every single week.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Sam Martinez. One of the points that Ms. Sam Martinez made around our partnership with the city, and I agree, I've always said it, we have a strong relationship with the city of Peoria and the resources that they continue to provide us, during times of adversity and even times, pre-pandemic. They've always been there. That said, Dr. Reynolds, you mentioned, we recommend, based on the guidance that we're receiving from the state, the county, the mask, et cetera. What would be cool, something to consider, Ms. Airy, is, if there could be a potential collaborative message, from the city and the district, as we enter into this break, over Thanksgiving, is there a message that we can just, obviously wishing everyone well, have a great break, and just even, potential recommendations on, as you're out during these times, numbers are rising, just be safe. Something to that extent.
And I think we can absolutely reach out and figure out, we always have to remember, especially with the size of Peoria Unified, that we have sister districts that we can team with, because as we share boundaries and boundaries of some school districts who are have not, we're never able to see a decline low enough to be able to open to in person, and so. Yeah, it goes beyond just the city. We get a city of Glendale. We can absolutely reach out to our sister districts as well.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be good. I think to the point that Ms. Underhill made as well, and knowing that these cases are coming in from the outside, how do we mitigate that just by showing our collaborative message across districts and the city. That said, Ms. Pingrelli brought up. The importance of keeping our kids in school, and absolutely yes. I visited a few sites this morning, and our teachers and site leaders are in line with that, without question. But I think one of the things that came out, of my visits was, one of the things that, and Dr. Rosa, you and I talked about this previously, is this, what I'm hearing is, having good quality, I guess, candid conversations, with our sites is important to reduce the amount of angst. Because I think individuals can absolutely take in good and bad news, but where the uncertainty, kind of comes in, or the angst comes in, is, the uncertainty, right? If there's no communication. I don't want to say no, because I know our team is very communicative, but I think, having the, we brought up, Ms. San Martinez brought up, that protocol, we're watching the data to understand, when is most safe to open, what does that look like, as the numbers rise, and how we kind of get into a phased approach, I guess, going in the other direction, right? And again, our priority is to stay open without question. And I think from a protocol perspective and our safety protocols, I think we are doing a great job at, and for understand, we're adding other layers of safety to our sites as well, which is great to hear, without question. But I think, one, it's just mitigating the uncertainty by, just having frequent and very transparent conversations with their sites, I think is good. And again, this is, what I'm hearing from them, so I just want to communicate that to you as a team. And one of the things that Mr. Eager brought up as well is one of the things that we talk about often is, leveraging the knowledge, the expertise of our sites, our site leadership, certainly our teachers and staff, to help us make relevant, objective, and global decisions on behalf of, the fourth largest district in our state. I just, engaging them in ways, that really drive knowledge that, maybe we're not thinking of, just because, again, every site has a story, I think is important. So those are the items that I wanted to certainly bring up and have top of mind, based on, some of what I'm hearing from the site level and Mr. Eager's comments. So that said, Mr. Moss, any further comments, questions from the board? Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know this is the health update, and so this might be off topic, just tell me, but I am concerned about the health of our people that are managing our COVID crisis. And I'm seeing that all over because everybody who's managing it right now it's a job on top of a job. So I guess I'm just curious and planting a seed that we probably ought to be having conversations, and maybe they are at the superintendent's level, about, how do we plan for staffing and how are we advocating at the state for funding for positions to manage COVID? So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Moss, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And CRT team, sorry. Thank you. Okay, moving on to our budgets, facilities, planning, and construction report, 12.1. These reports that we are referring to are all on our websites. 12.2, district budget report for the month of August 2020. The district report for the month of September 2020, all online. Report on upcoming meetings and events. Ms. Eric? No? Good. All right. Thank you. 12.5, legislative, state, and local updates. Ms. Myers.
Yes, well, good evening again, President Sandoval, members of the governing board, Dr. Reynolds. Although not formally certified, it does appear that Prop 208 was approved by the voters in Arizona. The ballot initiative and resulting law will impose a 3.5% tax surcharge on taxable annual income over $250,000 for single persons or married persons filing separately, or $500,000 for married persons filing jointly or heads of households, to increase funding for public education in Arizona. A local economist has projected that approximately 3% of the state's tax filers will be impacted by the measure. School districts need to be aware that resulting funding will not be immediately available, with projections identifying 2022 as the first available year. The Joint Legislative Budget Committee, a third-party state entity that analyzes the financial impact of ballot propositions, estimates that Prop 208 will raise $827 million for education. 50% of the measure will provide funding for hiring and raising the salaries of teachers and other certified employees, such as counselors and nurses. 25% will go to hiring and increasing the salaries of student support staff, including classroom aides and bus drivers. 12% will support career and technical education programs. 10% will provide funding to programs dedicated to retaining and mentoring teachers. And 3% will go to scholarships for the Arizona Teachers Academy. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Myers. Great news. Dr. Reynolds, anything from you on that one? Good? All right. All right. Board member opportunity to readdress agenda items. Ms. Stone?
Nothing, thank
Good?
you.
Ms. Underhill? Ms. Fingerville? Good? Ms. Sam Martinez?
I do have one.
Okay.
I wanted to say thank you to Ms. Airy on creating the email, the one link to email all board members. It has been updated, and I know that it will be very convenient and efficient for our community to send one email to everybody, and we have started receiving those today. So thank you so much, and I know our community will be grateful for that, so thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Sam Martinez. 13.2, request for agenda items for future governing board meetings. Ms. Stone?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Ms. Underhill? Ms. Fingerville? Ms. Sam
I
Martinez?
have two.
Okay.
To rediscuss GCQC, liquidated damages, and potential action to suspend through the remainder of this school year. Take potential action.
I'll second that.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Ms. Contra, we have the motion or request by Ms. Sam Martinez and a second by Ms. Underhill.
Okay. And one more. To discuss and potential action to create a position and scope of work for diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I'll second that. Any questions on that, Ms. Contra? No. All right, and I only have one, and it can be a Friday report, Dr. Davidson. It's just our retiree checklist that we have that, you know, just educates individuals on what to think about, right, when they're getting close to that date. I can't seem to find it on our website. I'm sure it's on there, but is there any way that you could just lead us to where it's at? Perfect. Thank you.
I'll second that. I would love to be a part of that conversation.
Are you thinking of retiring?
Yes. Wait, even though we don't get a salary, we don't get any like state retirement from this?
Mr. Sandoval, to clarify, you just want me to send the board the link so
Where
that you can review
exists
that
on our
return?
website, yes.
Okay.
That's
I'll
perfect.
send it out. Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. I do need a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn this session of the governing board.
I'll second that. We have a motion by Ms. Stone and a second by myself. Board members, please cast your votes.
I had logged out before. I was ready to go.
Do you need a voice vote?
Do we need a voice vote or are we good?
I think we're good.
Voice vote?
No, we're good. We're good. We're good. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, everybody. Have a great evening. Thank you, board members.
Thank you.